Okay, now that all the council members are in, we will commence the City of West Sacramento regular meeting of the City of West Sacramento City Council and West Sacramento Redevelopment Successor Agency and West Sacramento Financing Authority, April 20th agenda. And we will proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Steve Cohn. He's with the Breathe Bike Rodeo Event Coordinator. Steve?
All right, thank you. Happy to lead you. If everyone will say it with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. City Attorney, please provide a report on the closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council met in closed session to confer with the labor negotiator concerning the Police Officers Association and Firefighters Association Local 522. No action was taken. Council also met with its real property negotiators concerning two properties, one at 2204 Kensington Street and one at 1300 Lake Washington Boulevard. Again, no action was taken.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, please read the instructions for today's meeting.
The City Council meeting will be conducted via teleconference pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. The City Council adopted Resolution 2244 on April 6, 2022, confirming that a statewide state of emergency continues to exist because of COVID-19 virus pandemic, and that the Yolo County Public Health Officer continues to recommend measures to promote social distancing. Members of the public are asked to watch the meeting via live stream on the city's website or via Wave Cable Channel 20. Public comment may be provided using Zoom or through email by emailing the comment to clerk@cityofwestsacramento.org. Public comments sent via email before 5:30 p.m. will be provided to the City Council and posted on the city's website. Public comment given on Zoom is limited to 3 minutes and can only be made on matters within the City of West Sacramento's jurisdiction. The council cannot take action or deliberate on items that are not on the agenda unless there is an emergency and the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted. If you'd like to provide a comment, please press the raise hand button or press *9 on your telephone. Speakers will be called on in the order that their hands are raised. Please leave your hand raised until you have finished making your comment. When your name is called, the clerk will unmute you and will notify you when your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is item 1, which are presentations by the public on matters not included on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak under public comment?
If you'd like to make a public comment on items that are not on our agenda this evening, please raise your hand at this time. Our first speaker is Kathy Bailey. Ms. Bailey?
Yes, my name is Kathy Bailey, and I am the Riva on the River Board President. And we've recently been working with Mayor's office, or at least people have known about it, plus City Council. We send out the notices to all of you. We have a serious problem on our hands, and we wanted to give a little bit more information regarding that. Yes, a man and a woman were arrested who had broken into our mailboxes 3 times. And I want to preface this by stating that there was a previous mayor town hall that I attended and addressed this very same situation way back then. At this time, I did my own little homework and put together a chart that I sent out to everyone. It was what I simply did in a 4-hour block of time after work one day, spent until 1 a.m. doing it. Today, yesterday I got a phone number from a detective to call another number to find out the current status of our police report numbers. And I'm going to say that, except for the last 4, none of them even went to an investigator. The report was taken, photos were given, videos were given, license plates were given on most of them, and we never got calls back. No one answered our emails. No one followed up, and it stopped. Nothing went to an investigator. Only because we did our sit-in and sent out flyers and begged for people to help us did we get this Yahoo arrested. which is great, but it's not enough. So we're asking for some side of help from the city council and the mayor's office to do something about this. I understand, and in the town hall, the mayor specifically told us that we're understaffed for police officers. This is taking a financial detriment to all of us for people getting their passport stolen, their check stolen, their EBT cards stolen, for all the mail that's on. These people walk away with bags full of mail, bags. And so I'm asking the mayor and city council to look into this and do something, because the police reports are not being reviewed because there's probably not enough staff. And so at the time, that was a problem back then at the mayor's town hall. I'm asking if you could please look into this and let's get some more police officers or detectives, or for goodness sake, I'll do this on the weekend and at least, make known that we have photos and videos of the people and their vehicles and their license plates. We need some help here. Just arresting one person. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Maria Grijalva. Ms. Grijalva?
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I was going to do a
Whoops. I'm sorry, one moment, please. Ms. Grijalva, my apologies. I'm going to restart your time
Okay.
whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm trying to start a timer over here on my end. I was going to start, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I was going to start a land acknowledgement statement, acknowledging that we sit on the Patwin land, but Ms. Bailey's words really got to me, and I wanted to let her know that on June 7th, we have the opportunity to vote in a new district attorney, and it's my understanding under the first 100 days, the plan of action is to have a crime prevention program and to do like a gun buyback program. And crime prevention is the #1 thing that this new district attorney is going to be doing. And so I just want Ms. Bailey to know that there's an opportunity to have change right now in Yolo County, because the district attorney, and of course, which works with the chief of police of each city, isn't doing much for us right now. And right now we have an opportunity to get a new district attorney, and that's her #1 goal. And her name, of course, you might already know, is Cynthia Rodriguez. She's the endorsed candidate of the Democratic Party. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
We have no other hands raised, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next is our consent agenda item 2 through 6, and I'll pull item 6. Are there any other requests to pull an item? All right, if they're not, I'll bring up Mr. Cohen, who will be receiving our proclamation of the City Council of the City of West Sacramento declaring May 2022 as May is Bike Month. And Mr. Cohen, I'm going to read it really quick and then allow for you the opportunity to speak if you don't mind.
All right.
Whereas millions of Americans engage in bicycling because it is an effective form of exercise, a viable and environmentally sound mode of transportation, and a fun and sociable activity accessible to people of all ages, levels of fitness, and income. And whereas more than half of commute trips and 3 out of 4 shopping trips are under 5 miles in length, which is ideal for bicycling. And whereas bicycle transportation is an integral part of the planned multimodal transportation system funded by federal, state, regional, and local agencies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve the livability of communities by reducing traffic, noise, and congestion, and boost public transit ridership by encouraging riders to traverse the last mile between stations and destinations. And whereas the City of West Sacramento has completed major investments in support of bicycling, including the Riverwalk, the Washington District Sustainable Community Infrastructure Project, the Barge Canal Trail, West Capitol Avenue, separated bike lanes, and Sycamore Trail Phase 1. And whereas the City of West Sacramento is currently working toward completing several more major investments in bicycling, including the Sycamore Trail Bridge crossing over Highway 50, the Sycamore Phase 3 extension to Stone Boulevard, the I Street Bridge deck conversion for active transportation project, the Southport Levee Trail project, and has initiated the Sacramento Avenue Complete Streets Corridor Improvement Plan. And whereas commuting by bicycle can be a safe, enjoyable, efficient, and convenient way to start and end a workday. And whereas the local bicycle commute promotions, often referred to as bike to work days and energizer stations, have been successful at encouraging bicycle commuting. And whereas May is Bike Month helps increase public awareness for bicycling, educate the community about the benefits of bicycling for transportation purposes, and encourage people to try bicycle commuting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of West Sacramento does hereby declare May 2022 as May is Bike Month and encourages all residents to recognize the importance of sharing our streets with bicyclists and to participate in bicycling activities whenever possible during the month of May, proclaimed this 20th day of 2022. Mr. Cohen, thank you so much for being with us today and for your Saturday event, which I think promotes what we're trying to accomplish here in this resolution as well.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I wish we were back to meeting in person. Hopefully we'll be doing that someday soon. But yes, to kick off May is Bike Month, we're actually starting a week early. And on Saturday, of course, what better city to kick off May is Bike Month than West Sacramento? So as president of Breathe California Sacramento region, I'm pleased to say that we're having our first annual bike rodeo, and it will be in the Bridge District of West Sacramento. And you can see the flyer up on your screen right now. It's really a family-oriented event. Kids of all ages and adults of all ages are welcome to attend. There will be helmet fittings, bike safety demonstrations, lots of family activities, music, local vendors, food galore. So it should be a lot of fun, but more importantly, hopefully we'll stress the importance of bike safety, but also get people back out on their bikes if they're adults and haven't done that for a while. And of course, kids love to be out on their bikes, but we want to make sure they do it safely. So I hope all of you can join us out there in the Bridge District. What a better, can't think of a better venue for this event.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate, the work you're doing and introducing Breathe Bike Rodeo here in West Sacramento. It's definitely a passion of all the council members and the past mayor to increase access to bicycle trails so that we can commute around the city and also get to other destinations outside of West Sacramento. So thank you for bringing this to us and educating our youngest so that they become familiar and engaged. And we have Mayor Pro Tem Orozco and Councilmember Ledesma who would like to speak as well. Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Steve, for coming and doing our Pledge of Allegiance and also for bringing this forward to us. And thank you, Madam Mayor, for mentioning the passion project of at least our fellow council member Ledesma, as well as our former mayor. When I joined this council back in 2016, I remember engaging in conversation that I'm embarrassed that I have to, I repeat it because it just shows the growth over a period of time. And that was that our former mayor had said, we got to increase people getting on bikes for transportation, for main mode of transportation. And I said, I have 4 kids. What are we really going to do? Are we really going to have this caravan of people, biking through West Sacramento? How's that going to look? And lo and behold, within several months, we did it. And I mean, it's a long caravan. You don't want to be at the light when we're passing by and your light turns green, because there's no way you're going to get past. It's going to be another, red pretty soon. But with that said, there's so much to be gained. I love the vision for our city that's been set forth, making our city a very walkable and bikeable and healthier community. I look forward to the Sycamore Trail overpass. think that that really is going to be a literal bridge for our community and really encouraging our youth. I mean, we're talking West Sac Little League games and soccer games and trips to Sutter Health Park for games. And anyway, it's refreshing, both literally and figuratively, to look forward to our first annual Breathe Bike event. And thank you so much for your energy and your commitment to this effort. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you. And first of all, Steve, good to see you. A longtime partner. For those who don't know, Steve has been a longtime friend and partner of West Sacramento from his days of his public service on the Sacramento City Council. So thank you, Steve. Good to see you. And you've always been a great partner with us on these types of bike events. I think I in 2000, I forgot what it was, 14 or 13, I held a bike event for May's Bike Month. We rode the streetcar route, if you remember, the then streetcar route to support two important transportation type projects. So I appreciate all your work in the past and certainly the work of Breathe California. I want to acknowledge a couple of things. The event is coming up this weekend. Looking forward to it. I will be there, but also want to acknowledge, I know West Sacramentans works for Breathe California, Patrick Guild, who also serves on our Yolo County Transportation District on the advisory council. So Patrick, thank you for bringing this to my attention a few months ago. But also my other favorite pastime, you can see in the back, the guitar, our good friend West Sac resident Rod Stinson will be playing at the event on Saturday. So lots of good entertainment, good activity to promote bicycling in the in our area, and we have a rich history of biking in West Sacramento, and it's a perfect fit. So thanks, Steve, for being here, and good to see you.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you for mentioning Patrick. He just came off paternity leave. He's got a second child now, and he lives in West Sac and loves to bike, and I'm sure he'll be out there on Saturday. So thanks again.
Thank you. Councilmember Early.
I'm so excited for this event. And Steve, I can speak to the efforts that you have gone through and your team have gone through, and not only putting the event together, but also bringing nonprofits who will be tabling and also providing those services to our community and letting folks know about services, including my own organization. So we are really excited on United Way to be able to come out, talk about our partnerships and work that we're doing with the community. And I know a lot of the other nonprofits that will be out there who serve our community will also be talking and sharing about those different services. So I'm really, really excited for this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Early. Councilmember Alcala.
I was going to say thank you, Mr. Cohen, because for many, bikes are the only form of transportation they have, but especially now with gas being so expensive, it may be, just something really necessary in the years ahead. I loved riding my bike as a kid. That's the only thing that I had to get me places. And I'd love to see in our neighborhoods when our kids are out there on their bikes. So this is a wonderful event that's coming up, and I'm really happy because I think this is giving Davis, that's known as the bike city, in California, we're giving them, a good run for their money. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And yes, the key point is gas is being so expensive. Bicycles are the way to go. So it's definitely more affordable that way. Thank you so much, Steve, for being here with us and for your activism and initiating this great event that's going to be here this Saturday. I was so excited when I got your email and look forward to seeing all of my fellow council members there.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
All right. See you Saturday.
See you Saturday. And are there any requests for public comment, Madam Clerk, on any of these items?
Anyone would like to provide public comment on any of the items on the consent agenda portion of the agenda? Please raise your hand at this time. I see no hands.
All right, I'll close public comment, bring it back to council, and I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommended action.
Call it.
Oh, Norma, you can have that one. You seem to
All
move on
right.
it. Go for it.
Been trying to do first and second. Okay,
Thank
so
you,
we'll-
Dante.
Councilmember Ledesma moved and Councilmember Alcala second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early. Aye. Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, that item is approved. And next is our time set agenda item under the city manager's office is item 7, a public hearing on initial draft maps related to the city's transition to district-based elections. And our deputy city manager, John Robinson, will be present along with the team who have been working on this.
Thank you and good evening. This is another, obviously, in the ongoing series of public hearings, solicit council and public feedback on maps related to the city's transition from at-large to district-based elections. As with the previous hearings, redistricting partners, the city's consultant will make the presentation, but I would like to make a few framing comments before I turn it over to them. Since February, the city has been conducting extensive community research outreach in an effort to generate input from residents about the appropriate locations for the boundaries of the city's council district. There have been 4 community workshops, 2 of which were in person and 2 were online. Materials inviting residents to participate in this process have been posted online and stuffed into thousands of utility bills in multiple languages. The city even posted mobile road signs to encourage residents to weigh in. And the community has responded. To date, the council's received over 50 proposed maps. Most of those came in online. Some of them came in through the box at the library. At the council's meeting of April 6th, the council elevated 8 maps for more detailed consideration. And these focus maps are included in the attachments to your staff report. With the deadline for selecting a final map looming on May 10th, it's time for the council this evening to further narrow the number of maps under active consideration. Between the last meeting on April 6th and tonight, several additional maps have been proposed by community members. And it's definitely the council's prerogative, if you wish, to add those maps for additional consideration as well beyond the existing drafts. But if you choose to do that, staff strongly recommends that you also eliminate a greater number of existing draft maps this evening in order to achieve a net reduction in the maps that are under consideration for May 10th and to have a manageable decision-making process at that time. So with that, I'll turn it over to redistricting partners.
Hello, thank you, John. And everyone, I'm Joe Armenta. I'm with Redistricting Partners. We are the consulting company that's been helping the city out with the districting process. We also work across California and across the United States. We're also joined by Paul, who's on the line somewhere in our panelist group here, but he'll be available to answer questions throughout this process. So I have a quick presentation that I'm going to show you all just to update you all on where we are at. And you all can see my screen, correct? Excellent.
Yes.
Great. So just a quick overview. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. We've done several meetings at this point. I would recommend if any of the members of the public have questions, visit the districting website on the city council's main webpage. You'll find a link to it, and you'll see our past presentations, which goes into the nitty-gritty of all this stuff. I'm going to kind of cover this a little bit more briefly tonight so we can turn it over to the council and turn it over to members of the public to give their input on their preferred maps. So just an overview of where we are though in this process. We began this in February, so we are now about 2 months into it. We are towards the tail end of this. We've held a number of public hearings in front of the city council at past city council meetings. We also held 4 different public outreach events. 2 were virtual, 2 were in person. We had several members of the public show up. We were able to teach them how to use some of the tools that we have available, as well as get feedback on the maps that we drafted at the time. Today is April 20th, and we are having another council hearing on this where we'll go over some of the draft maps that have both been proposed by us, but have been also elevated by the city council. We're hoping to begin the process of narrowing this down, and I'll go more into what that means kind of later on in this presentation. We have one more meeting after this where the city council can provide input, but we need to have the maps finalized by, we need to have final versions of the map posted online on May 11th. There's a requirement that any map that the city council votes on get posted 7 days before the city council considers it. So the final day for the city council to consider a map within our timeline here is May 18th. And so 7 days before that is May 11th. There is a special city council meeting scheduled for May 10th. So again, we are kind of at the end of this process here, where we are starting to narrow down the options that are available to us in hopes of adopting a map by May 18th. At that May 18th meeting too, we can talk about, we can sequence and number the elections, and we can go more into that and towards the tail end of this presentation. And also we're happy to answer questions on that process. But basically, again, we are starting to narrow down our options at this point. Just a reminder of the criteria that we use when we're creating these maps. The maps need to be relatively equal size within a 10% deviation. And what that means is the biggest district, the difference between the biggest district and the smallest district can't be more than 10%. And so 10% is kind of the magic number that we're working by tonight. But again, the districts need to be relatively equal size. They need to be contiguous as well. All the parts, every part of the district needs to be touching each other parts of the district. They should maintain communities of interest as well. And we've been doing a lot of public workshops and hearing a lot from the public. And we're using this to build out our maps and to decide where the districts start and where the districts end. We also, try to follow local jurisdictional boundaries and things of that nature. And then we also keep the district as compact as possible. We're not drawing squiggly lines all over the place. We believe in community based districting, and basically what that means is taking community input and incorporating that into our maps. And part of the public workshops that we've been doing is teaching people how to both use the tools that we have available where they can draw their maps and also provide us input on what their communities look like. We've also been explaining the rules of the process to them. And then we've been releasing and publicizing maps online and throughout this entire process, just so folks know what's going on, what's being considered, and they can give us their feedback on the maps that have been proposed. And with that, I kind of listed out a lot of the feedback that we have gotten. These have been available in past presentations, so they're just kind of out in writing right here. I've gone into them in past presentations. But we are continuing to get feedback. We're publishing it online. We're sending it to the city council as well. And we encourage members of the public to both participate in forums like this, but also send in written comments as well that we will forward to the city council and make available on our website. I think the only kind of new online submission that we've gotten is folks from the Stonegate community saying they want to be included with the Linden Circle kind of area. But other than that, we've kind of reviewed many of these public comments in past hearings, and I'm happy to go into them more if the city council would like that. At the same time, too, we have a tool available online where members of the public can go in and actually draw their own maps and propose districted maps to us. They can also draw their communities as well, where they think their communities are, and provide us an explanation of what their community is. That's available on our website called Districter. The website's available on this PowerPoint presentation, but it's also available at the city's website. And the city's website is really what we've been using as the main hub to keep the public informed of the process, but also make sure all the materials and information is available for folks. So the city website, the staff has done a great job in keeping it up to date. And every online submission we get, we publicize it. We run it through our mapping software. We get all the demographics and we publicize it on the city's website for members of the public and the city council to review. So all these are available again on the city's website. You can go there. It's the first kind of tab on the main website. It just takes you right to the districting website. I encourage you to go there. It's also listed on this slide right here. And at the last meeting, just to remind folks, we have created three proposed draft plans just based on the information we received at the beginning of the process. We have presented this a couple of times to the city council and to the public. But then the city council also took 5 public maps and then elevated them to draft maps, just to inform the public that, you know, these maps were potentially ones that they would consider. So we labeled these draft plans 4 to 8. And basically at this point, we have 8 draft plans online. This doesn't mean that the city council has to adopt one of the 8, but these are ones that we just wanted to elevate to say that these were the preferred maps at that time. And to receive input from the public on those maps. So we have draft maps 1 through 8 now. I'm going to briefly kind of cover them, but each one, again, is labeled on our website. It's available on our website, and we have these packets available that only show the entire map, but then go district by district and show you the demographics for each one, so that you can get a better idea of what these districts would look like. And so just to kind of dive into these draft plans, this is draft plan 1. What it's kind of doing, you have a district that goes on both sides of the port. You have a district fully within the south, and then a northern district, 2 kind of northern districts up here. When we were looking at the deviation for the most part in order to say whether or not these maps are compliant with the Fair Maps Act criteria, we want to keep that below 10%, and this one is at 4.5. So that is draft plan 1. We have draft plan 2. Again, this is one that we created. I'll just display it for you all. You can kind of take a look at it. And then the total deviation is 6.8%. We have draft plan 3. Again, this is another one that we created just based on the input that we received. So this is draft plan 3. And then the population deviation is 7.6%. The next draft plans are ones that were public submissions at the city council. We encourage the city council to uplift and elevate. So this would be draft plan 4. Again, this is one of the public submissions that was sent to us. So the council decided to elevate this one. This one does have a Brighton Broderick split, and then tries to maintain the quadrants as much as possible. And the overall population deviation for this one is 6.8%. So it would be within the 10%. This next map is available. It has the Bridgeway area, both the Bridgeway Island and also this Bridgeway community down here, linked together in one district, and then kind of creates a V at the bottom. And then it has a Stonegate Hole with Lennon Circle that crosses over to the port. And this one, it keeps Brighton Broderick together and puts the rivers, kind of draws a line around the riverfront all the way to the canal. So to the rivers, to the State Streets area. And if we look at the population deviation, this was at 5.4%. And then we have draft plan 6 here. Again, this was another public submission. This is creating kind of a Brighton Broderick district, has the rivers in it as well. It again has a kind of a State Streets district in the middle. And then the southern districts are similar configuration. There's some small street changes up here in the north, in the northern part of this district. And we're at 7.9% deviation. So we're within the 10%. This is another Brighton Broderick split map. And again, this is draft plan 7. And again, the southern districts look relatively similar to what you've seen, just some minor street differences in District 3 in this one. And this district, though, is at 10.3% deviation, so it's a little bit outside of it. We would have to do some just minor adjustments, mostly in the District 2 area up here. This is the overpopulated district, and the District 1 to get that under 10%. So that's draft plan 7. And then we have draft plan 8. This looks very similar to one of the maps that I think it was draft plan 6. The main difference is in kind of this area around Capitol Bridge kind of area and the I Street Bridge. There's just some minor differences in 1 and 2. And this is a 4.6 deviation. So those are the draft plans that have been elevated and also by the City Council under consideration. There are also new public submissions, and I will review those very briefly after I get through this. But really what's next is for the City Council to begin identifying their preferred plans, maybe suggesting some possible changes to the maps, and also just providing direction to us on, if there's a map that's a little bit outside of the compliance, how can we go about fixing it? One thing I do want to mention though is really at this part of the process, we have received so many public map submissions that we pretty much have seen big major changes on the map. Like every big major change that is kind of possible in the city of West Sacramento has been kind of submitted at some point. And really, I would encourage the council to kind of consider big changes right now over kind of smaller changes, right? And what I mean by that is, a big change is a neighborhood that has 5,000 people in it, right? So whether that's Bright or Broderick, moving that area around is going to cause changes in the rest of the map. Just because there's so many people, and again, we need to keep these districts at around 11,000 people. And so, whether we include those neighborhoods together or separate has a big impact on the direction of the map. A smaller change would be, hey, I like, one of these maps, but can you move the district boundary, 1 street over? That's kind of more of, that's a smaller change. It won't have as big of an impact on the overall population or the demographic. It might be needed to keep a community whole or not. But those kind of things, we can do at our next meeting just because it's an easier lift. At this point, we would encourage the City Council to start, coalescing around the shape of a map or, 1 or 2 of the maps that they would prefer. And then we can move on to some of the smaller changes at the next meeting. Because again, we do need to publicize these maps on May 11th in order for them to be at the final consideration point. So, some of those big changes I think are kind of necessary for us to start narrowing this down and really looking at some of these maps, and we're happy to uplift them to show you kind of, if there's certain maps that they all have the similar characteristic and everyone is in agreement that we don't like that, we should probably start weeding those ones out. And then we can start kind of fine tuning other maps in the next meeting kind of thing. So really just some common themes we have identified throughout this process, and this isn't an exhaustive list. But again, we mentioned these at the past meetings, but what to do with the Bridgeway Lakes and Bridgeway Islands area? Should we keep them together or in separate districts? Kind of what to do with the port, where should we put it? It's kind of smack dab in the middle. It could end up in a lot of different places. Using Jefferson as the main divide point. If you kind of use the eastern part of Jefferson and if you just divided the city and try to keep it south of the canal, it just doesn't have enough people in it. So you do have to cross Jefferson at some point. And where we cross is kind of is important. The State Street areas, does it go in the north? Does it go in the south? That's something that you all can decide. The Rivers is actually a relatively small community at this point. I know there's future development in it, but at this point, there's really only about 900-ish people in the Rivers area. So I don't want to say it's not an issue at all, but it's a smaller kind of issue that that you all can decide kind of what to do with. It's not going to totally radically change the map, but what to do with that Rivers area is something that you all should take into consideration. Bright and Broderick, should they be in separate districts or united in one district? And then we start talking about, should we use the railroad tracks or the main streets as the dividing line between the northern districts? And then again, one of the final steps I would say at this is whether or not we intentionally underpopulate a district to account for growth and future development. We can do that kind of again in the next meeting once we start coalescing around the shape of the map. But that's it in terms of the presentation, I'm happy to just go through the public maps that have been submitted at this point, and then turn it back to the city council for discussions. And again, we will be here, but just give me 1 second to pull up the public maps. Many of them are very similar, with just some minor changes. But again, these are just kind of a few different looks. So these are the maps that have been submitted since the last time I presented. They are available on the website. And I'm just going to kind of briefly go over them and provide you an overview. So this is map 123766. It looks very similar to our draft map 1 with a change up here in the north. The rivers area goes kind of along the riverfront. And then there might be some changes around this area. So that's the shape of it. And then to go into the population deviation, this one would be under 10%. Smallest district is 3.2. The largest district is 2.7. So about a 6% deviation. So that's 123766. This is 123819. This district kind of has the more quadrant approach, although Wright and Broderick are together in one district. And if we look at the population deviation, we're a little bit over the allowable deviation. So we're at about 14.6% over. And so there would be some minor adjustments to this, mostly in the southern districts. I'm pretty confident, though, if we moved a few census blocks, we can make this one work. But again, that's at the discretion of the city council. So this is, again, 123819. There also is 123820. This one is almost exactly the same as the last one. I think they just kind of cleaned up some census blocks around here. I think they realized when they submitted it that they left some areas that they needed to fill in. And so it's pretty much the same. And the population deviation it's the same issue. So it's at a 14.6% deviation, with the biggest district being District 3 and the smallest district being District 4.
So the deviation's 14?
Yes. And it needs to be at 10.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that's 123820. This is 124343. Again, very similar to the last map. Some changes around here in the southern area and around this circle area. And what that does is actually brings down the population deviation to what is that? 12.2%. So we're getting closer to that 10%. And they just moved some census blocks around. So yeah, that's map 124343. And then this is map 124497. Someone gave it a name as landmark designated district. Similar, yeah, kind of a quadrant down in the south, and then a northern kind of stacked on top of each other. Give you a second to look at it. This one, though, if I remember, is pretty far outside of the allowable deviation, at 22.2. So this one would need some work in order to balance the population. So that's 124497. This map is 124599. When you have a Brighton Broderick split, and then kind of using Jefferson, but just hopping over a little bit in the south, and then it crosses over to the State Street area in the southern district. In this one, the population deviation is under 10%. This is the smallest district, or the biggest district is District 2. So this would be 5 points. I'm sorry, biggest district is District 1. This would be 6.3%. So within the 10% deviation. And again, that's 124599. We have 4 more maps. But again, some of them look very similar. So this one looks very similar to last one, 124, 600. Just very minor changes in some areas. And the population deviation. For this one, though, the changes were big enough, though, to push district to overpopulate District 1 and underpopulate District 4. So you're at 11.9% deviation. So this one would be outside. We just have to do a little bit of work to get it to 10%. Next map is 124635. The title for this is Maximize Communities of Interest and Equity. It looks very similar to the last 2 maps that were submitted, although some changes in this area. They use more of the channel as the divide. And within the allowable population deviation, 5.8% is the biggest district. Smallest district is 3.3% under, so 9.1% deviation. So we're under 10%. And I got 2 more maps for you. This is map 124735. Option for equity and balance. I think, again, it's very similar to the last map you saw. The population deviation is a little bit over, though, in this one at 11%. So just minor adjustments to this one in order to get it under 10%. And then finally, we have this map, 125127, the Corey Cummings north-south overlap here. And the population deviation is at 5.2% in this one. Excuse me. So 125, 127. And those are the public maps that have been submitted since the last time. So with that, I'm happy to turn this back to the City Council. That's the end of my presentation.
All right, thank you so much. I'll open it up for council comments at this time, to see if there are any comments. If not, we'll open it up for public comment. Madam Clerk, do you have any members of the public who would like to speak?
If you'd like to make a public comment on this item at this time, please raise your hand. Our first speaker is Dan Ramos. Mr. Ramos?
Hi, I just unmuted myself. Hey, good evening, Mayor Guerrero and members of City Council, and thank you. It's hopefully we get to see you guys in person here in another month or so. But anyway, it's great to be with you tonight. I wanted to thank the redistricting partners. What a great job of conducting this research for our considerations tonight. And John, great job as always as the key staff member on this. I just wanted to voice my support to map 123820, which is we call it the chamber map. And as you know, I've been involved with the chamber for actually 35 years, and there's 75 years. It's been a long time. And as you guys know, I'm born and raised here in West Sacramento and been involved with a lot of stuff. I think this map really does a great job of bringing some of the best districts together here. And I really wanted to stress the importance of easily identifiable and understandable by residents compact. This is consistent with existing neighborhoods. Believe it or not, back when we did incorporation, actually we started back in 1985, the whole process there. And districting was one of the things that we considered. And this map that is the one I just referred to is about the closest I've seen to what we considered way back then in terms of how to divide up into districts. So it's got some historical context, but it really does encapsulate the communities of interest in the neighborhoods there. And I just wanted to stress one more time, the old West Sacramento area with the Westgate district, and they always had a great connection all the way through up to the riverfront, and connecting the river's development as a waterfront feature and the things we're going to do with the museum district, with the Indian Museum and stuff, transportation studies we're going to be doing, or transportation improvements, it all makes sense to keep the waterfront, that one whole district there as part of this thing. And of course, in Southport, we have all it divides perfectly. I know you got to make a little adjustments to make the populations work. But anyway, I just wanted to start my support for the chamber submitted map of 123, 820. And congratulations, and hopefully we can get this process whittled down and you guys can make some decisions. Thank you for having me tonight.
Our next speaker is Danielle Betancourt. Ms. Betancourt?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was unmuting myself. My name is Danielle Betancourt. Thank you to Mayor Guerrero and the council for listening to my comments. My family and I are residents of West Sac, and my business is Streets of London Pub, located at 2200 Lake Washington in the Lowe's Shopping Center. I am a board member of the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce, and I also serve on the board of directors. I'm here to ask you today for your consideration to elevate map 123820, the chamber map. I was able to attend several educational meetings through the chamber, and we put a lot of thought into the locations of the businesses and the industrial area. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to my comments, and once again, ask you to elevate map 123820.
Our next speaker is Marty Swingle.
Hello, and hello, Mayor and council members. My name is Marty Swingle. I'm a real estate broker in town, and I've had the opportunity to get to know people all throughout the city and really learn our city and also complement each other. I have not participated in some of the programs that District Partners has put together for this process, but I have been following along, familiar with requirements. The maps I've seen, I just really wasn't pleased with for one reason or another. When I did see map 123820, the chamber map, that was the first map that I liked. And what I liked about it most, that it does follow simple historic neighborhood boundaries. Have really much other criteria than that really follow the neighborhood boundaries that I know that neighborhoods are familiar with each other, or they want to be associated with the neighborhood around them. And that includes, the rivers, which is a gated community. Makes more sense for that to be included with the bridge district. That whole area is going to continue to grow. And what I also thought was interesting and be a great opportunity, someone in the Brighton Broderick area to actually run council, and that would be exciting, I think. So again, and one more thing, I did notice that I have the information that the population deviation is 8.69%, and John had mentioned that it was 14, but that's not the information I have. I have 8.69, and that's for map 13820. So hopefully it still falls within. If there are some adjustments needed, sure, that can be made as well. But this map makes the most sense to me, and I strongly encourage you to elevate the map to one that you consider. Thanks for your time.
Our next speaker is the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Mayor Guerrero, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, and respected council members. My name is Denise Domke. I'm a West Sac resident and CEO of the West Sac Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is here this evening to support District Elections Map 123820 and request that it be elevated for consideration and eventual adoption. Through our advocacy committee process, which in this instance included a presentation from redistricting partners and city staff and input from our members, the board of directors of the chamber set criteria guidelines for the chamber's evaluation of submitted maps to ensure adequate representation of the business community. You each have a copy of the Chamber's letter of support, but in a brief summary, the criteria are: these key business sectors should be represented in multiple districts: industrial, manufacturing and distribution, business parks and retail clusters, West Capitol Avenue and the Central Business District, the Port District, and by that, the port, the Deepwater Channel, and stone locks to the Sacramento River, the riverfront from the confluence to the southern city limit. Also, districts should follow simple historic neighborhood boundaries. The river's master planned community should be included in the riverfront district as intended and represented in one district to ensure implementation of development on the waterfront. And agritourism should be represented in one inclusive district. Map 123820 accomplishes the Chamber's stated goals. So for the continued economic stability of our city, we urge you to consider the criteria presented by the Chamber and elevate map 12380. We like the framework it sets up, and we hope you use it as a basis for a final map. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Our next speaker is Maria Grijalva. Ms. Grijalva?
Thank you for this opportunity to speak also. I am calling in favor of maps 2, 6, and 8. 6, 8, and 2 are the maps that I feel are more representative of the Latino population and are the communities of interest that are trying to be represented here. For us, the other maps, such as maps 3, 4, 5, and 7, would remove our Latina representative that we have right now from the North. The only representative that's from the North, that's been our champion representative of the North, I'll repeat that 1,000 times, into District 2. So maps 3, 4, 5, and 7 are not favorable to the Broderick and Bright area. The Broderick and Bright area have always had Norma Alcala as our champion, the champion of the poor, when she was in city council, in the school board. It was originally when she was on the school board that she tried to bring district elections, and so she's always been a champion. So maps 2, 6, and 8 are the maps that would keep our Latina champion in the North, Broderick and Bright area, and again, 3, 4, 5, and 7 would not. And as you know, the purpose of this is for communities of interest, such as Latinos, to have a political representation. Unfortunately, it is not for business interests. And so business interests are not communities of interest, unfortunately. But I'm sure all of us Latinos, once we're well represented, are gonna go out to eat and buy plenty of stuff and pump the economy. And so thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Our next speaker is Andrea Von Cleve.
Hi, my name is Andrea Van Cleve. Thank you for allowing me to speak and taking the time to hear all the public comments for item 7 tonight. My husband and I are residents of West Sacramento, and we own our home in the State Streets. I'm very familiar with the process the Chamber used to select map 123820, known as the Chamber map. And in my opinion, the criteria is very important, and I asked City Council to elevate map 123820 for consideration. One thing that really stood out to me and I really appreciate about map 123820 is the fact that the districts follow historic neighborhoods. And I think that's very important to keep and maintain. I like the fact that our district, which again is Old West Sacramento and the State Streets, have input into the current riverfront and planned Pioneer Bluffs. I know from speaking with other residents in my neighborhood and my generation really considers the state streets and Old West Sac, Riverfront, the Bridge District, Pioneer Bluffs. Really, we consider that our neighborhood, and it just makes sense to keep those areas together. It's also just very important for my husband and I to have input into those areas as it continues to grow. And this is why I believe map 123820 has the best representation of that. Thank you for your time. And again, I ask that you elevate map 123820 for consideration, and I support this map, and you support this map moving forward. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Douglas Gibson. Mr. Gibson, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my apologies for that. Anyway, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak regarding this item. My wife and I are residents of Bridgeway Island. We have been here for 20 years. We love living here. We love the diversity, the peacefulness, the fact that it is family-oriented, and also the availability of recreational amenities in the area. So we feel that it's very important that you elevate map 123820 for consideration. We like the way how the districts in the map follow historic neighborhoods in West Sacramento. Each district seems to have its own flavor and uniqueness. In particular, we like the way the map combines Bridgeway Island and Bridgeway Lake in the same district. This is important for us as we consider Bridgeway Lake as being in our neighborhood, and that also that it has much in common with Bridgeway Island. Further, both communities share and enjoy the same amenities and facilities, including access to the levee. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to speak and to urge that you elevate map 123820 for consideration moving forward. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Scott Rafferty.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to talk about something that surprised me in the presentation. We heard about maps being reformed by bringing the population deviation down to 10. 10 is not the ideal population deviation. The population deviation is ideally 0, and you have reasons to move away from 0. Keeping neighborhoods together, clear boundaries, making sure the minority district is as coherent as it can be. So I found that very confusing and not a lawful criterion. But the real shock today is this ambush by something called the chamber map, which I'd never seen before. I was managed to find it once I heard the number. It's not identified as a chamber map, but it would have a very different timing for it. Districting is not about recognizing and perpetuating history. Redistricting is about change. It's about recognizing the reality that there are new communities that have not historically been represented. But most fundamentally, districting is about people. And the location of businesses is relevant only to the extent it affects the adjoining people. Businesses do not vote. And anyone that supports the Chamber of Commerce map is basically telling the community and the court that they care more about being supported financially by businesses than they care about empowering voters of all races. You represent voters. You don't represent businesses. And businesses are very important, but it's the people that decide the law. It's the people that you are accountable to, not businesses. And this map, and surprisingly, most of the maps, except number 2, take some very marginalized neighborhoods in the western part of the city along the freeway, the trailer park, some extent Evergreen, and that whole area south of Capitol. And they put it in the south, even though there's a huge gap there where there are no people between the main canal and Industrial Highway. And I heard earlier, very early on, the chamber saying how important it was to keep both sides of the ship channel together. Not if it's taking a marginalized neighborhood along the freeway and connecting it to a much wealthier neighborhood several miles away. That is part of the North. I mean, I think the ship channel is one of the clearest boundaries. Now, the State Street area, which is put in the south, that does have a little more in common with the more affluent areas of the city. So I think two kind of puts that all together. But I really am disturbed procedurally and just substantively by what I've heard about this out of nowhere chamber map, because you represent people. And this is going to work to bring neighborhoods together, to bring people together, and to give people an equal opportunity to vote. You need to look forward, not backward, and you need to get the population deviation to where it is actually being used for permissible goals. And future growth needs to be treated very, very carefully. Speculative, and it is pretty much essentially inconsistent with the very clear mandate in the statute that you use the 2020 census. So I'm a little bit concerned. I think we should be narrowing our focus and not bringing up, certainly not this new map. And I think it's very important that the marginal neighborhoods, some of which are very marginal with very high housing insecurity, lots of obstacles to being involved in our local politics, and along the freeway in the western part of the city, they are part of the North. They do not. They should not be submerged into a district where the candidate is going, where any elected official would live miles away from them and be elected by much more affluent, higher turnout neighborhoods. So I would really focus primarily on 1, 2, but I think there are actually, I didn't see this coming, but I think there are maps that would be very difficult to defend in court. Certainly the chamber map, as it's called. So thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Anna Domick.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I've been listening to all the public comments, and I just wanted to respond to them. I very much appreciate hearing the business perspective, but I just wanted to reiterate some of what was just said by the last speaker, and that I think it's important for the city council to keep in mind that with redistricting, or districting as we move to district elections, that the business, while we appreciate the business perspective, the members of the community are the ones that this is drawn for, not for business specifically. So just keeping that in mind. Further, I wanted to make the point that these maps are also not supposed to be drawn around current representatives. This is about getting different representation for people for their neighborhoods. So where current representatives lives is also not supposed to be what these are based off of. I live in the Stonegate neighborhood and just wanted to give feedback that some of the draft maps that were proposed split my neighborhood, or it's right below my neighborhood, and put my neighborhood with kind of the western side above the port. And I would argue that that seems like a huge stretch. Some have also put us with Ridgeway Lakes. I also feel like that's a stretch. I much prefer the maps that put us all of the, I guess it would be the right side of Jefferson together. So I just wanted to make that point. I sent a letter to the city council. They can see that my preferred map and some of the reasons. But I also just wanted to make the point, the map that I know a lot of has been getting a lot of support from the chamber. Just want to make a point that when I reviewed the law about different districting, it says that there should be a connector, either a bridge or a road. And it looks like on some of these maps that are being pushed that the channel is splitting it and there's no connector or bridge or road. So I agree with some of what the speaker before me was saying, that to put some of these more marginalized neighborhoods in the northwest of our city and lump it with one of, some of the much more affluent neighborhoods of the southwest seems like a big stretch, especially when they're not linked. So I would recommend looking at if you can make that channel, seems to be a much more clean break versus lumping some of that together. And I know sometimes to get the numbers right, you have to cross somewhere. So making sure it's linked by a road where things cross and it makes sense. And then the last thing I just wanted to make a point of is my understanding as part of the purpose of this is to, make sure to give voice to people who maybe have felt they haven't been heard as much. So I want to make a point that I think it's important to try to equalize out the different areas. Some of the maps I said
3 minutes.
Okay. Was that 3 minutes, did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I will finish. I'll just say one thing is just not to pack any Latino population only in one district. Try to make sure that there are multiple districts that are a higher Latino population would give a higher voice to underrepresented groups. So thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Maria Garcia. Ms. Garcia.
Hola, buenas tardes. Gracias por la oportunidad de hablar. Y sí, representando nuestra comunidad latina, el mapa que nosotros elegimos es el 268. Y muchas gracias por la oportunidad.
Muchas gracias, Maria. John, can you translate for her, please, for the rest of council?
I apologize. That was beyond my comprehension.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you speak Spanish. Oh, Nana, go ahead.
I do,
Mayor?
but not as well as she does.
Okay.
I believe Maria was saying that her community was in favor of 2, 6, and 8.
Okay, thank you,
Of
Nana.
those, thank you.
Our next speaker is Verna Sulpizio.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I am calling in today to share my support for a map that was written that was not in the agenda package. If people want to look it up, the number is 124635. I submitted letters to our mayor and city council members, and this was also included in public comment. So if anybody wants to read it, it's there. But map 124635 falls into all of the legal requirements that are required by state and federal law on districting, which I think is obviously important. But as a longtime resident of West Sac, my family moved here when I was 87, and I don't say that because I think my vote matters anymore because I've been here longer, but I've been in the community for a while. And so after talking to a lot of my friends and constituents in the area, one of the things that was really strong that I heard loud and clear was that Stone Gate needed to be kept with Linden Loop. And so my map, I didn't draw the map, but the map that I'm supporting groups them in there. And it would also be the district which my neighborhood is in, which I think I'm very much aligned with those neighborhoods. Map 124635 also gives Broderick and Bright 2 city council members and does not concentrate our Latino voting power in one district. We would get 2 very strong districts with Hispanic voting power, which I think is very important. It includes the Rivers and the Bridge district in one district. Again, this is what I said at my last public comment. The Rivers is much more similar to its neighbors in the Bridge district than its neighbors in Brout. And then I also commented before that this allows us to create connection and unity over Jefferson Boulevard and not use the Barge Canal to divide our city when these 2 neighborhoods on each side are very similar. And then finally, this is just something in the execution of redevelopment and commercial corridor work. I'm the former executive director of the Foreign Road Partnership, which is a property and business improvement district. And that district sat in 3 different elected officials districts. And why some people advocate that having 3 elected officials voting in one area could be a positive, I actually see it as a negative. The district literally fell through the cracks. And because literally the street was in the crack of 3 districts. So as we look forward to future development and really revitalizing West Capitol Avenue, really tightening up the numbers of elected representation in that area will allow for property and business owners And the residents that are living there, because as we bring more housing in there, this is important to them too. We'll be able to hold our city council members more accountable if they're not doing the work that is needed to improve the area. I don't believe, and again, this is in my experience, multiple elected officials do not improve representation or success, as not one elected official will be responsible or held accountable for progress. And then finally, where current elected officials sit should not influence district lines. I think people who've been involved in this for a while know that. For the public listening, I just hope people really take that into consideration. This is about the community and not about the elected officials that are in office right now. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Matthew Hargrove.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. First of all, I got to say I'm very flattered. Map 123820 is not the chamber map. It's the map I drew. And it was submitted 3 days after the last council meeting. So there's no surprise attack on this map. This map was based on the conversation of the last city council meeting that I listened to. And I tweaked some other maps that we've been doing that I've been paying attention to. So I love that folks really like map 123820, but it is something I submitted. And I submitted it based on the conversation that happened at city council 2 weeks ago. Mainly that conversation focused, it was Councilmember Ledesma who commented that he was looking for a very simplified map that folks could understand. And several council members commented that they really liked the type of map that had the city done in quarters. So that's the basis for 123820 is that conversation. It actually was, the map right before it, 123819, is labeled Bright/Broderick together, North 2 district, South separated by Jefferson. That is the exact same map submitted 5 minutes before 123820, which was a mistake. I hit return twice. So that's the genesis for the map, and it's based on your conversation, council member. Now, there's 2 different ways you can do maps, and they're both good. There's the lateral map, which initially I like the lateral map, and there's the quartered map. As I listen to more people, I really think that the quartered map for the city is a much better way to represent our city and our communities of interest. Growing up in West Sacramento, we had very distinct neighborhoods bounded by the railroad track, by the freeway, by the barge canal, and sometimes it made those divisions, they still feel like they're present and they loom very large. We all know they're there. The lateral map basically cement those age-old divisions in our city into place politically. I don't like that, and I would tend towards looking at the quartered map. I also think that there's a policy and political draw maps that were clearly shown by the numbers at the last city council meeting in terms of the demographic. The lateral map that a few people have asked for tonight, if you look at the demographic that you looked at last time, the lateral map really put a lot of communities of interest in the central and north part of our city in a situation where their votes are diluted. And my understanding was this process was started so we did not dilute those votes. So I'm disappointed to hear that tonight. The other potential drawback with the lateral maps is that you're isolating the entire north part of the city with one vote on the city council. All of you who are on the council know that if you start with one vote, that's a lot worse than starting with 2 votes. The quarter map allow the north to have
5 minutes.
votes.
Sorry, 3 minutes.
So I hope you'll look at 123820, fix the number on the deviation. The mapping problem has the mapping software has an issue where it miscalculates deviation. You can fix that at the council. It's a good base map, and I hope you use it. Thank you.
We have no other hands raised, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment, bring it back to council. For your input, I think our goal is to narrow down the number of maps, and a council member Alcala.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take a shot. So at our last meeting, I mentioned that I still needed to talk with quite a few folks. And after having spoken with numerous people in the community, map 6 seemed to be the map that was the most cohesive. We have the railroad tracks that actually divide some of these areas. there are very significant demarcations on there. And it would actually create two Latino districts, if you look at map 6. And an interesting thing someone brought to my attention was map 6 also had industrial properties in every one of the districts. And I think that's something important, because we've usually had, you know, the I would say a bit of a conflict between industrialized areas and maybe residential areas. So this seemed to, you know, address that issue. I did want to say one thing about the rivers. I live in the rivers, and 4 people that I grew up with in West Sacramento also live in the rivers. And we've always been happy that our fellow rivers people feel part of the North. They come to all the events at Bright Park. They come to the festivals that we've had at Holy Cross. They are very much in support of, you know, having our pool built for all the kids to use. So when people say that, you know, we have much more in common with the bridge area, I live in the rivers. I talk with these people. I take my dog. I go out to all the events. I talk with neighbors. So that's not a very accurate portrayal of the rivers being incredibly similar to the bridge area. The rivers feels very much part of the North. So I did want to say that. I guess I have some other maps that I like. I thought map 8 was a good map. I had an opportunity to look at that, and I got feedback from I'm going to mention some of the people I spoke with, not just in my neighborhood, but in other neighborhoods. The Canos that live out in, in the Linden Park area, along with Palmer's. I spoke with Matthew Hargrove. I spoke with the Rojas, the Madrids, the Garcias. Maria Garcia was one of the individuals, and many of the individuals who were normally disenfranchised from this process. And, you know, after speaking with all these individuals, map 6 seemed to make the most sense. So I'm really leaning toward that map, but I'm willing to also consider map 8, as well as map 2. All right.
Thank you, Councilmember Alcala. Any other council members? We are going to have to narrow this down, so.
Madam Mayor, I just had a couple quick questions and I'll make some comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Joe, where's Joe? There you are, Joe. Looking you into Hollywood Squares. So well, first of all, you know, I did bring up last couple of meetings my preference for map that takes natural landmark boundaries into Jefferson and laying out a quadrant in a simple sort of grid style or quadrant style of map. So, and I saw several maps come through with that. And a question did come up during the public comment that I would like to hear from you on 1233820, the Matt Hargrove map apparently, but about the deviation on that one. And could you just provide some clarification on sort of what that deviation is and how it's calculated, or is it correct?
Yeah, so we were looking into this today too as we were pulling up these maps. The thing with District R is it tells you the maximum population deviation. So basically it tells you how big the biggest district is away from the ideal population, how big the biggest district is away from 0, but it doesn't do the math to tell you what's the difference between the biggest and the smallest district. And so when we ran it through our program, which is what's published on the city's website, we found that the deviation is actually the biggest district is at 8.7-ish%, which is what it tells you in District R. But the actual population deviation from the biggest and the smallest district is at 14.6% around there. So really that's why there's different and the numbers.
Okay. And then a second question, the map 124635 was referenced tonight. And I want to be clear, is that one is, I believe it's draft plan 4. Is that the one I elevated, or at least suggested to be elevated? Is that the same map? Because on draft plan 4, I think it's 4. Sorry, I'm scrolling through. They appear to be the same. Just trying to maybe. I don't remember what the original number was of.
Yeah, I can one that you elevate.
I want to say that it's 724 actually. I was looking through for 635, or I think it's 7. But and to answer that, I think I'm looking at the map right now, Chris, and it looks like it might be cleaned up. There's some issues in the green area that might be changed in comparison.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay.
So just to be clear, so the map that Councilmember Ledesma had elevated last time, is that map 4? Is that draft plan 4?
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in knowing. Is it map 4, Chris?
Yes, I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I was following the conversation. Keep going, Councilmember Ledesma. Put myself back on mute.
No, I think that's I said clarifying question. So I don't really. I'm sort of in the same position. I'm pleased that a number of folks chimed in with various other maps, not just this one, and understood at least my perspective and my neighbor's perspective and others I've talked about. And I think the other part of it too is I know folks here are watching and many people aren't. I think that was kind of what I'm thinking about too, is many people aren't watching and aren't paying attention to this really important endeavor. And I think the best we could do as a council is provide a map which makes some common sense landing when they turn around in October and they decide that it's time to vote for a representative from their neighborhood, or they won't even know that they have to represent. They have to represent just for their neighborhood, and the map's got to make sense. Like, oh, okay, that to me has always been sort of how I started this conversation. So I'm looking at back to my 4. It's very close to the other 2 maps that I mentioned and a couple of others that are highlighted by Joe today. And I think I'm still gravitating towards that sort of quadrant feel. What I noticed in some of the maps was the breaking point at the barge canal, and how in 4, the reach goes into Old West Sac, parts of my old neighborhood along Deerwood, near the port, to grab extra folks. And then in some of the other maps, it connects it more with the Linden Loop and expands sort of the interior of the Linden Loop, I think. And then thinking about our neighborhood, listening to one of the speakers tonight, just trying to keep common neighborhoods. A couple of the speakers mentioned in the Stonegate area and an area that this sits in, area 4 here on plan 4. The area surrounding the town center, Stonegate, and back to the east to Village Parkway, sort of is that connected area. And I think if there was any work that I kind of would seek is, how do you keep the Old West Sac area in one? Is there enough population if you continue to look into the Linden Loop, which is why I kind of questioned the 820, where it kind of was able to grab, because we just don't have enough people in most parts here. It's a very small pie. We're cutting up with 53,000 people, but trying to make it work so that, can you accomplish the quadrants? Can you keep Old West Sac together in one district versus having District 4 reach up to it? Because I think that would be important as well. But again, those are some thoughts I have, and I know we got work to do, Mayor, trying to delineate it, but I'm gravitating towards this sort of quadrant map.
Map 4.
Map 4, yeah, still.
That's your choice.
And with the knowledge that we have some work to do around some population as well. So
to address some of the public comment.
Oh, just around getting the population. I think this one hits 4 does hit the
deviation.
deviation. Is that right, Joe?
It does, yes.
Or does, yeah. But again, I would try to seek to, if there's a way to, and again, maybe as we get towards the next level, could you make it work so the population to keep Old West Sac together, which is where the above the Barge Canal, purple meets green meets orange. That's what I'm thinking about. Can you take a little more into the Linden Loop area, which is again just to the east of the town center? I'm sorry, west of the town center. Take the interior of that. Is that enough households, population to take away from that? Anyway, that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Chris. I think I'm interested also in, so your focus is in the south area is what I'm interested in knowing, where you wanted to be some tweaks to make it work.
Are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am.
And I'm sorry, what was your question?
I think you mentioned some of the tweaks around the Southport Town Center and the Stonegate area. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I mean, as I've articulated all on, that's where there's probably some tweaking to be done there. There's probably some tweaking to be done in the north. I know that that's part of the discussion around the rivers, what that belongs with the riverfront. I did like elements of 2.0 that it connected that with a larger swath of the Old West Sac and along the areas in that area. But again, keeping a quadrant map is sort of like for what I'm principally thinking about here.
Okay. All right. Dante? Councilmember Early?
That is good. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, so a lot of what I heard. So first, in going back and talking to community members, and then also and just thinking through the quadrants and some of the things that we've heard through this process that have been elevated, potentially Jefferson being a divide. So again, these common sense divides, Bridgeway Island, Bridgeway Lakes staying together. I've heard, and I think you guys have probably received some similar letters, the rivers staying together as well, being really important. I think, at least for me, draft map 4 is what's resonating. And I think 124635, which we've gotten letters on, and we heard about tonight. And I think, Joe, you might have said the deviation was 9.1% on that. I was trying to quickly write down as you were, because again, I was trying to follow.
And this is 124635. Correct. The deviation for that one, yeah, is around 9.1%.
Oh, I think she froze. Well, we'll come back to her if she unfreezes. But it's a good picture. I like her freeze frame there. Oh, she lost her. Okay. You want to wait? Does council want to wait until she? Oh, here she comes. Okay, good. There you are. Okay, continue on.
We should also work on broadband, but that's for another meeting. So Joe, you might have answered this question already. 124635 deviation. Is it 9.1?
Yeah, and that one, just to confirm, that one's this one you're talking about, correct?
So I'm looking at the number. Not
124635.
Okay. So this is great. If you don't mind keeping it up, that would be awesome. And so it looks very similar. I've just been flipping through it looks similar to map 4. And as I said, it makes sense to me. What it does in regards to some of the comments that we've heard as well, that's different from map 4, it looks like it takes the rivers up top and keeps it together, which we've heard from community members in written and verbal, right? that's important to them, that you don't just go through the rivers. It also keeps Bridgeway Island and Bridgeway Lakes together. And then I think most importantly, and I tried to quickly go and just take a quick peek at it while we were meeting. And when I look at the population by race, what it does is you see as far as by race, the populations in District 1 and District 2, so the top two in the north, you have 42% Latino, and then in the other district, 40.2% Latino. And then what you see, citizens voting age by race, it looks like it's 27.4% in sort of the bright area Latino, and then 28.4% in sort of the Broderick area. And for me, that's really important. And we heard in the comments as well that you hold voting power, right? And that we don't actually move backwards in regards to having some weight while still keeping communities together. And so you still have this bright community that's kept together. You still have your Broderick community that's kept together, but that is with the bridge, Washington, and the rivers, which I heard Councilmember Alcala say, like, hey, the rivers is part of the North. And so in my mind, this is all part of the North. Bridge District is part of the North in my mind. Washington District is part of the North in my mind, and obviously so is Broderick. And so I think that's important. And so if I were to elevate a map that's, again, similar to the map that we had elevated previously, which was map 4, I think this does some of the tweaks that we've heard from the public that's important. So this 1, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5 is what I would go with right now.
Okay, 1, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5. I've heard, I think, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. Yes, go ahead. You're next.
Thank you. So I appreciate all the feedback. I know that we're trying to narrow it down right now. And first off, I stand corrected. There are two. There's 1, 2, 4, 7, 3, 5 and 1, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, which are really similar with the exception of a parcel above the barge canal that essentially would be moved into quadrant 4, district 4. So in the last meeting, it looked like there were a couple of maps articulated that were brought forth that essentially do resemble map 4. It was pretty much a combination of 118905 and 12307, which made the 125056 map 4. And I like what I've seen with several of the maps that have been put forth since then, including 123820. I see there's positive things in that the quadrant, certainly, and the 124635. What I'm seeing that, as far as feedback, let's start with 123820. That one, in my opinion, the positives of that, right, are that. And I articulated this similarly in the argument. It was using a different map, but some of the same criteria, which were to have 3 districts touching West Cap. And I heard public comment, and I appreciate that, where it's kind of like that, almost you just toss the responsibility to somebody else and everybody's invisible. I can appreciate that comment. At the other hand, I also like that there are so many different complexions to West Capitol Avenue and so many different developments in different areas. So, I mean, the same concept articulated last week. The state streets are kept intact in this map. Industrial and the majority of the districts, and the Linden Loop in this particular model is intact. It's not split. The riverfront area is connected. Barge Canal is a boundary, and I did hear a comment saying that north of the Barge Canal should be included because the complexion of the community is similar, but north of the Barge Canal, if I'm not mistaken, there's not development. So we don't even have anything yet. I know we will, but I could appreciate that too. So I don't think that that's an issue. It doesn't really even change the deviation in the map because there's no people there to really count this juncture. It does offer more than one district on the riverfront, and the southern portion is addressed with respect to, the quadrant issue, with Jefferson essentially being the boundary between the east and west. The issues, of course, that have already been raised are that, we have a deviation issue, clearly. And I know that I heard Joe say that there could be some tweaking. I've been tweaking away, and I'm trying to figure out how to get this lower without issue. It's difficult. I'd love to see some type of options. The Meadowdale and Evergreen areas might not be similar, appropriately situated in this map. Or maybe ideally. So, I could see where in 635 it would, it would probably serve those communities a little bit better. And then I also appreciate the argument about wanting 2 districts to capture more of the northern area. And many of the comments last week had to do with ensuring that, there was enough, so we're not diluting particular communities, their voices. And so, but at the same time, I do appreciate that 635 does address that issue. And so I had some remaining questions. One was already asked and answered. The second question I had was that, if there were a higher concentration of Latinos in the north, in the 123820, or at least the area demarked in blue, not in the map that I'm showing, but in that particular map.
This is 820. This is the demographic page. What we're looking at, and I always forget I can zoom in. Actually, I'll just show you the pages. So this would be these are the 2 northern districts. So this would be District 1, 31%, CVAP 47%, total population. And District 2's, we're at 33% total population and 24%. And you're asking the difference between that and 365 or 635?
No, I think the more pointed question is, in 820, does that subject the city to any legal exposure? Because there's such a high concentration, or maybe that's the argument. And if you don't know the answer today, I just want to know at some point whether that's a problem with that map. And let's see, got here. Secondarily, there has been some comment about the rivers. And I know that some of the maps had been cleaned up to include that little knob up above, but does the rivers go further than that? I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that it does capture that entire community and not, cut off anywhere short of that. Go ahead.
In regard to your first question, I'm happy to refer it to legal counsel or to Paul. In general, there are no federal voting rights concerns, regarding majority minority districts in this area. And so, in my opinion, there's not packing or cracking concerns around here that we have to be on the lookout for. But again, I'm happy to refer questions to your legal counsel or to Paul, who has a lot of experiences on this. In regards to this area up here, the little nub, I believe that's what you're talking about. That's really, I think, for you all to kind of tell us the city doesn't have kind of well-defined areas. I know when I zoom in on kind of a Google Maps area, it does look very similar to the parts that are, I guess, to the east of this road. Yes, but I would rely on you all to kind of tell me where that begins and where that stops.
I mean, I guess we could go take a look. I mean, it's all behind a gate, so that makes it easy.
Yeah, I guess that's right. So, okay.
John, to this public access, all you have to do is go through the gates. That was one of the conditions in the river.
I know. I love going to your pool, Norma. Yes. It's nice.
So with 124635, this is a good, these are all good options, the maps that are put forth. Obviously, it captures more in Broderick in two districts. It brings the Meadowdale and Evergreen issue that I raised earlier that was previously sequestered into other districts. So at least they're together and resembling the complexion of a particular community, and it respects the comments about the way the southern portion of the city could be drawn. The concern obviously that's been raised already is for somebody who lives in the state streets, when I walk this community, I see a community that looks a lot like itself, and it's just nostalgic, and it's admittedly sentimental because it's old West Sacramento. The houses all look alike, and it's in this version it's split into 3 different districts. I mean, ultimately that's something we get over, but every person in this group could talk about a community that's going to get divided. It's just which one is going to be on the chopping block here, and so just raising that. The area surrounding Memorial Park and Westmore Oaks is all going to be in 3 different districts. And then there's also a problem with the split of the Linden Loop that might need some cleanup. I'm not sure if we can get there with the deviations that we're need to meet. So finally saying, I didn't look at 124,343 so closely today. I did see that if you clean up the Linden Loop, I did it while we were on this meeting. There's a way to move the deviation to, it's like a 2.73 plus 3.48 if you do the math, and that's under 10. But perhaps that is some potential, they're all similar. They all have the quadrants and a very similar kind of look to them. So if I were to give my top 3, just to narrow it down as I was asked to do, I would say that those would be my favorite.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Roscoe. I wanted to write down which ones are your favorites. Sorry.
The 124,635. The 123,820, but for different reasons, right? And then finally, I'd never looked at or analyzed closely the 124,343, but it looks, they're all very similar. They just move around very different. Or not very differently, minorly different.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to all the council members. I think we have about 5 maps from what I've heard. We're down from 8 to 5. We made some progress. I'm really happy to see that. I think I did hear 2 additional maps, 2, 6, and 8 from Councilmember Alcala. And then I heard map 4 and map 6 and 124,635, 123,820, 124,343. Between, I don't know exactly what the deviation, not the deviation, I don't know what the breakdown is in the Latino voters, so that from the map that you created, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, but what I see is, a 31 among the North area, 31 to 24 percent.
I'm sorry, which map are you referencing?
124,343, and then the 123,820. Those have like 31 and 24% among the Latino voters, and so I think that's one of the characteristics that I'm looking for. I know that even though it's called the chamber, it is the chamber members who came out, but they were residents who came out on behalf of the chamber. A lot of them, and then some aren't. But I appreciate and value their input as well. So I can see how and then the several other maps. I didn't take a look at 2 and 8 yet, but I looked at 4 and 6 and 635, and I see that the ratios of Latino voters are comparable. Just kind of flip around a little bit from 27 to 28%. So it breaks it even a little more to have Latino voters be able to vote. I think among 4 and 6, and then 124,635. I think that breaks it up a little more evenly as far as the distribution. among those maps. So, I think you may be tweaking it so we can make sure we have an even distribution among the different ethnicities. I think that is, in keeping with the spirit of the Voting Rights Act, making sure that we have members of the community who can be representative. And, we do have a great, diverse city council, so we benefit from that already today. I just want to be able to continue to perpetuate that as we look at, establishing districts and making sure that we can preserve that spirit here in the future. And so, unless I got the numbers wrong, but I'm looking at it really fast as I'm trying to gather all the input and capture what's going on here. So, Councilmember Early, you have your hand up? Okay, go ahead.
I just didn't want to interrupt you. So, Madam Mayor, just again, because I'm trying to follow everyone. So for you, where you're leaning right now, I think you said draft map 6, if I'm following you correctly, draft map 4, and 1, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5. Did I get 4, 3?
I haven't looked at 2 and 8 yet to be able to draw a conclusion. So I'm going to
ones that were, you haven't looked at the ones that are in our packet, those ones?
Yes.
I have all the maps in front of me if you'd like me just to quickly go through or just
let's go over 2 and 8 so that I can take a look at those. I mean, I got my little iPad here trying to go through everything really fast.
So this would be draft map 2.
And Joe, these are the ones that are in our packet, right? I just want to make sure I'm not, okay. Just make sure I'm following.
And this is one of the early ones we submitted that we created. The draft map 2. Draft map 6. And draft map 8. So 6 and 8 are very similar with just very minor changes. And then draft map 2 kind of has some of the same architecture in the north with some changes in the south. And some changes around the port area.
Okay, that helps. I think so the maps that I think I would select would be 6, 8, and then the 8201. What was the full number?
It is
123820.
Yeah, that would be this one.
And the reason for that is also in taking a look at the percentages of those that are among the different ethnicities, it breaks down pretty evenly in some ways. And then, so there's less of a distribution. 820 probably needs to be worked out a little bit. So it's not that much of a gap between 24 and 31%. And then also there is, in my experience, a spirit of connection between the rivers and those in the Brighton Broderick area. They are more, as far as financially affluent, but there is a connection among the community members that I've seen in working with them as well. And I know there's an interest to keep the riverfront tightly connected, and there is going to be potential growth. I did, before you made that point, that was something I've been thinking about. The future growth along the riverfront in certain parts, like the Bridge District, they have a number of projects, and there's just going to be, I don't know how many homes are going to be built off the top of my head. I can't remember, but I think it is going to grow. So looking at right now, as far as a district that is not going to have as much of a significant growth compared to the riverfront, I think it would help balance that in the future. The growth is going to happen in the next few years, whereas further south, that growth is going to happen probably in about 4 to 10 years. So it's a little stretched out. But along the riverfront and the bridge district, I think there's more imminent growth that's going to happen within 3 to 5 years. So that's another part of the logic. And then there's all these other points that the council members have raised as far as the quadrants, which I appreciate. And just wanted to get back to John here to see if he's able to give us any feedback, or Joe or Paul, any other questions you have from us.
Before we get back to
early, yes.
I really do want to highlight, because we heard it in public comment, but I don't necessarily think we heard it from our council members. But 123820, I think looks very similar, as Matthew Hargrove said, to draft map 4. And one of the things that does concern me, that we also heard from some of our public comment, is the area that takes into account going over. Joe, could you pull up that map one more time?
Which one?
123820. 123820. The map we just had up.
Yep.
And the only thing I would say, because a lot of this again looks very similar to draft map 4 and quite frankly 124635. But the part that makes me, I just want to make sure I pointed out that makes me slightly nervous, is in District 3, where you got Bridgeway Lakes, you got Bridgeway Islands, and then you go to a potentially upwards, potentially marginalized community that may not have had the same kind of voting turnout, as well as the connection as far as affluent. And my concern there would be that community may be drowned out by Bridgeway Islands, Bridgeway Lakes, but frankly, just the community in the South, again, because there's going to be more, a louder voice, just frankly. And that would be the only part that would make me a little nervous about this map.
123820.
Mm-hmm. But again, I agree, Madam Mayor, with you. The quadrants make sense. I agree in keeping the riverfront together. 100% agree with all of that. But that's only that particular part right there seems to not fit in regards to just the kinds of communities that you're trying to connect together.
And you're directly, I'm sorry if I may, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm trying to
you're specifically talking about where the cursor is right now.
Where the cursor is right now. Okay, thank you. I was trying to figure out exactly where she was.
I saw the look.
Yeah, I'm over here pointing.
You
can't see me pointing.
Where the cursor is. Put that cursor back.
So just the top part of District 3, the top part, meaning the north part of that District 3, that area looks very different than Bridgeway Islands and Bridgeway Lakes. And the communities, when you think about it, and again, I think we heard some public comment on this, just as far as communities that maybe have historically been marginalized, you may see more of that in this area up in the north of District 3. And that would just be my only concern about, I think, this map, is that you may further be marginalizing communities by adding them with Bridgeway Islands and Bridgeway Lakes versus potentially putting them in 1 or 2.
I found it very hard. I don't know, as far as being able to get the area, to fit. It just was really challenging. I was sat with John, and we see leaps and jumps, when you try to fill in an area. And
it's not easy. I'm not. I'm not suggesting that at all. And I'm saying, again, Madam Mayor, I'm saying I agree with a lot of what you said, right? Keeping the riverfront. You see, again, South, the Linden Loop together. You see Bridgeway Islands and Bridgeway Lakes. So a lot of what we heard, right, is reflected here. Like I said, that's the only part that gets me slightly anxious is, oh gosh, I don't want to potentially silence a community whose voice may not have been heard even previously, right? That would, again, be us going backwards.
Up in the northwest corner, that little pointy, that I think is an area where I try to canvas those. It's I checked in with the neighbors there a lot, and they're a lot of retired people in a mobile home park area. I think that's the Lakeshore, I think is the name. lot of retired people, heavy voting population. I'll tell you, they are school teachers, veterans. They're well connected in some way to the community. They're volunteers in many activities. So I know that area there is, even though it's restricted from canvassing, I find my way in just to say hi to them.
You know this is being recorded.
I do. I just said I go in there and say hi to them. they're plugged in to the community. The area in one, I find, if you're canvassing that area, you have bigger gap from one home to another because they aren't, they're non-voters, and that's the area that, and then in the river area. I mean, it's a balance, but it just blends the two because I know that they work. They're very sympathetic with each other. Carl, can you mute your
So Madam Mayor, what I'm hearing is maybe potentially what might alleviate my concerns is just going back and looking at the percentages of voters in those areas. And maybe when I see that, it'll be like, yep, we're good.
Yeah, I think that is a big mobile home area that I can think of that is around that spot there, because that's that little lake and then
it's evergreen. Yeah,
I want to make sure I'm totally understanding you because I share the same concern, but I'm looking at the current.
Valhalla.
Yeah, it's Valhalla. Yeah. Let me make sure that's which is south.
Thank you, Matthew.
Which is south of the freeway, right, where the lakes are. That's what we're looking at.
Yes.
So yeah, I just don't know what the population. Yeah, that neighborhood. The point.
Yeah, and right
I'm
above
agreement with that
is the Arco station and West Capitol and a lot of industrial buildings there.
Okay, so Madam Mayor, it sounds like what and this is what we're doing, right? Is we'll go back, we'll take a look, we can, and again, maybe my concerns will be alleviated here, that we won't further marginalize a community that maybe has a strong voice, because that's what I'm hearing from you, Madam Mayor. Is they have strong representation.
I think they do, from my experience. There's
well, numbers don't lie. I'm going to go back and look at the numbers.
Strong voting population.
Yeah.
I think there's some expertise here, Mr. Mitchell.
That's good. That was a good segue.
Mr. Mitchell, what does the voting population look like over there?
Well, I'm looking at Google Maps right now, and
Mr. Paul Mitchell. Sorry.
Yes, I know.
I will say that one of the issues that we see in a number of different communities is that the minority population voting patterns can be very different than the white voting patterns. And I believe Mr. Rafferty has also looked at this. And in the city of West Sacramento, the divergence isn't as great by precinct as it is in some other parts of the state. And so, and that might have to do with kind of the changing nature demographically of Brighton Broderick over the last 20 years, as an example, West Sacramento has become a higher turnout community. And your elections are held in concert with higher turnout statewide elections, as opposed to other municipalities that historically had their elections, even districted elections, in April of odd numbered years, where you'd have a districted election with 600 voters voting in an election or something like that. So you won't suffer from those same kind of problems here.
If I can just add in just one extra layer to this, just having looked at the map and played with it in a lot of different ways, and I'm happy to do this for other maps. If there is a community right here, basically remember, again, one of the districts has to cross the channel at some point, right? And the reason it's going so high up here is it's grabbing population, and that's that little neighborhood. I don't know if it's a mobile home park or what it is, but it's just grabbing people there. And that's how it's populating the South, essentially. If you didn't have them in, then this district would go into District 2, and that's kind of where it would grab population, and that might shift things up here. Or it would take in more population from the south, and then it would shoot over into the State Streets area. And like it would grab folks from there. And we've seen that in other maps, right? That's when this district kind of jumps over using the Jefferson Bridge. So that's kind of, that's just basically the construction of this map is why this is going so high and grabbing these voters up here, or this population up here. It could go this way, or it could grab more people down in the south, and which would push this district up to the north.
So I could see that little corner that I, you know, up on the northeast corner there, that little divot there is more connected with 2, which is the State Streets, just from my experience and who the residents are. You know, they are retired community and state employees and folks who just, you know, are looking for a more, you know, a home that is maintenance free and in a beautiful area too, that they've experienced. And that's what I see in the State Streets, just something, you know, small and manageable, just conveniently located to be able to access the amenities in the area. So I would see that. And then 1, you know, just as far as the socioeconomic patterns, I've seen some more, you know, impoverished conditions in that area where homes are a little more run down. And just, I think a lot of families living in one setting. So they're more impacted. That may affect the population size because they are, I think, living in tighter quarters from what I've experienced in visiting the neighborhoods. So yeah, I could see 2 going over into the 3 area, making that connection there like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have what you need, or do you need us to?
So I have one ask of the council
Sure.
members. So some of these maps look very similar to each other. And so if we could just start, maybe make it easier for folks to start weeding out someone. And what I mean by this is, you know, this is 123820. And this is 124343, right? We're talking about very minor changes on this one, but they're basically the same architecture. Additionally, you know, this is Plan 4, and this is 124635. So again, very similar maps. Only difference is really in this area. And this is Plan 2 and Plan A. Plan 2, Plan 6. I'm sorry, Plan 6, Plan 8. And so if there's any of these that we can kind of weed out, and we can go back and make minor changes kind of later, but again, basically, I think we're talking about essentially 4 different maps. You know, there's this one that lives in this family, one that lives in kind of this family, one that lives in this family, and then one that lives in this family.
I mean, for me, if I were picking between draft map 4 and 124635, I think is the one you put up. I would go with 635, right? So 124635 over draft map 4.
And we could just make that amendment to draft map 4, make it like 4A.
Yeah.
I was just trying to help the man out.
That works, yeah. 4A, right? So we can kind of get rid of 4 and say 4A. Not get rid of it, but, you know, elevate 4A.
Just to be clear, I'm fine with that. I think that's where I articulated most of the quadrant maps I consider in the same family, but you're differentiating the the reach of one down south to the canal, the difference between the two families. So that's sort of the debating point that I think is relevant and important. Right? So
this family is different from the other family in that Bride and Broderick are split in the north.
Yep.
So
and the reach of one down to the canal.
Yeah.
Right, which was what I was listening to most.
Right. So what I'm hearing though, we can elevate of these two, we can elevate one to like A, right? Just in terms of publicizing it and making sure it makes sense to people. Of these two maps, is there one that folks prefer? Sorry, this is 124343. And this is the 820 123 820.
Well, I think the question still stands for me, which is whether or not 820 is legally defensible. I want to make sure that that issue is resolved. I was playing with 123 820 as we're having this meeting, assuming that, okay. And if you mess around with a little bit of the Linden Loop and incorporate a little bit more of it, there is a way that the deviation does shrink, and it does so in the way that you do the calculation, not the one on the screen, but the one that where you add the numbers between the lowest and the highest. But were that the case, I just want to make sure that 820, if it is one of the top ones, is one that we can support legally and that it meets the deviation.
At the current level, it's outside of the deviation.
Right.
If you direct me, I can look around Linden Circle. There's a few census blocks around here that we could take.
It's not ideal.
Just
but
to give you your options, like there's a few census blocks around here that we could take that would balance out the population. You could go into this area. Maybe this looks better. Anyway, you can go into this area right here and take just use the street as a dividing point and take that area, or you can cross the bridge and grab some of the State Street area.
Yeah.
I think those are the three ways you could balance out the population.
That's right.
And I think I just want to speak real briefly to this concern that was raised about the legality of this plan. We want to identify the way that plans are being created through what is essentially the rank criteria of the Fair Maps Act. So, things that we've talked about, equal size, contiguous, communities of interest, and so on. If Matt Hargrove, who's a member of the public, drew this and had those things in mind and tried to keep neighborhoods together and articulated that, which I think he did tonight, that should satisfy those concerns. If somebody comes forward and they say, hey, I've got this great map because it keeps together all the buildings that were built this one year, and this other map is this buildings that were built another year, that's not in the rank criteria. That's not a real justification for drawing lines. You want to have justifications that are within the law. And so I think that Mr. Rafferty's immediate response to this, the way it was characterized initially, I can understand why. If he thought that this map was being drawn to put businesses in certain districts, that wouldn't be within the rank criteria. It wouldn't be an appropriate method for deriving these maps. But if these maps were derived prior to that based on the traditional criteria and the criteria in the Fair Maps Act, there's nothing to suggest that they wouldn't be legitimate. Now, we did look closely at this issue of whether or not that District 3 is contiguous, and it is by Industrial Boulevard. And so along that eastern edge there, it is contiguous. But you could, as a council, decide that you don't want to cross it there because along other portions, it's not contiguous. It's contiguous only on one passageway there on the far eastern side of it. So as far as whether or not it's legal, I'd say the way that Mr. Hargrove, who's been very involved in this and claims to have created this map, described it, it is legal. We do need to fix that deviation concern, which would essentially wrap it up.
Thank you. I think, we could talk about, just, you know, I just want to make sure that that Councilmember Early's concerns about the area with Valhalla and Evergreen, that we, and maybe we have already, I don't know that I came to that conclusion. I just want to make sure that her concerns are addressed, and that, you know, we'd have a community that is not, yeah, that one, it's just that other issue. But for me, I'm still going to stand by the 123-820 and the 635.
Of these two, is there one you like better? Just because they look very similar, and again,
Oh, they're so similar. Let's go back and forth, toggle for me.
so I'm clicking back and
You know
forth.
what? The thing is, the difference is that you have a little triangular hook right there. There's no people in it, so it doesn't change the deviation on the very bottom of the 4. Okay. And then the other thing is a little sliver right above, right below the West Capitol Avenue, that changes when you get to, I guess, let's see, that's 343 right now. Go ahead.
This is 123-820.
That we're looking at now.
This is, yeah.
Then I would say you would want, I would say that the, go back, that one is more preferred, only because it has the aspect of having 3 council districts on West Capitol Avenue.
The one thing, there is a non-contiguous block in this plan that we'll fix. You see that little sliver at the bottom of 2, that right there, that'll be fixed. And then we can also, if we want to elevate it to a draft map, we could look at ways to address that deviation.
Yeah, I don't want to scrap 820. I mean, to me, the 2 of them are so darn similar, the 343 and the 820. Frankly, I just that just has this additional aspect that I've argued. But again, they're pretty equal to me.
I think this is helpful. We heard about 380 is what we heard about tonight from different community members.
820.
Okay. And so I think for me, what I would want to do, similar to what we've heard from Councilmember Alcala, as well as our Madam Mayor, and I think from other folks, my other colleagues on this call too, is I would be curious to talk to community members in Bridgeway Lakes and Bridgeway Islands, as well as community members, you know, further to the north. You know, as you said, it's connected by Industrial Boulevard, to see, you know, for them, do they think of, you know, hey, how often do you use the boathouse, right? And so, like the markers of the community that you know in Bridgeway Lakes and Bridgeway Islands, what real access, right, do some of the communities further north have? And do you think of yourself as being together as community members? Because that's really what this is trying to do, right? Is connect those communities and say, hey, this is a community, not only because it's connected by Industrial Boulevard, but because you feel, right, Council Member Madam Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, you know, hey, I walk this neighborhood. And so I would be really curious, right? Like, how often are folks from, you know, from some of these areas walking each other's neighborhoods? So I think that would be the part. And I'm not saying we eliminate it, right? I'm just saying this is great that we're having this conversation, because then, right, it's on us, it's on our community members to come back and say, like, oh no, not quite, when we go to vote on the final maps, right?
And I do have one family of maps too that, you know, again, these ones are very similar. If there is one that you want to uplift over the other one, mostly the question more is like, if you were working off of one, you know, which one would it be essentially? Because I'm clicking between both of them, and really the difference is just these few blocks in this area, and then this like one block on one side of the street.
Can you click on 2 just to see the difference between 2, 6, and 8?
This is 2. So 2 has enough differences, I feel like, that it could kind of stand alone as its own map. And really it's, this district going all the way up, and then this district going to the river. And I'm sorry, the port is in this district as well. And then this is 6. And again, 8 looks very similar to 6.
Okay.
And so if between 6 and 8.
Between 6 and 8. Between 6 and 8. All right, let me see again. 6, please.
So this is 6. I feel like an optometrist right now, but this is 6. And again, mostly, just to direct your eyes, mostly it's this area right here, and like this one little notch. And this is 8.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you want us to narrow it down between 6 and 8?
If you can, it would be preferred if you did. And again, we could modify it later, but if we were working off one map, make small changes of these 2.
I think 8 is good. 6 is good too. I just can't decide here. I mean, it doesn't look like there's much of a difference anyways. Let's just keep 6 for now because it looks even. All these little divots like that are just, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. So just to review, what I've heard was, we'll look at 2. We'll kind of elevate 6 again. Of these 2, I believe the one that we were deciding was this one, to relabel it 4A, because it's very much like 4, just kind of cleaned up a little bit. We'll fix this area over here. And then of these 2, publish both of them, or just one?
Go back to the last family, because you were talking about 2 different families. So if you go back to, this 2, I would agree with you to keep. I think you recommended this one because it's more cleaned up. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is draft plan 4. This was from kind of, I guess this was what we reviewed from the last meeting. And then this was the public submission.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you're saying this one's a little more cleaned up than
this is in this area right here.
Yeah, and I would suggest to keep that one if we're kind of want to head that way. And again, my reason for choosing this is at the time, 2 weeks ago, this seemed to be closest to quadrant, so it's still a choice. And my preference would be to go back to the other 2. Which one would we start from? It would probably be 2-0 to start. But again, no one would have to make tweaks to that to define, in which direction do we pull population in which neighborhoods. I think it's the right conversation to have.
Can I make a quick comment? Sorry, on that point. With the difference between the 3-3, I made some changes to 820 that look a little bit more like 3343, which would include the area that would be highlighted in 3 to lift it up. The other part would be some cleanup around the Linden Loop. Again, I don't know if it's really cleanup or if we can do it, but if there's some little areas, some streets around there where you can take more of the population. Whether or not that triangular portion at the very south end is included or not, it's neither here nor there because it doesn't really change anything. But the deviation numerically on the screen is 2.73. And then when you do the top and bottom numbers, it fits as well. So just wanted to put that out there. And it is a little bit more like 3343.
And so, I mean, one thing you can do too is you can instruct us to balance out the population in this district, and we can bring it back next week and you can take a look. And it's basically just map that we've made minor changes to just to balance the population, and you can read. Does that work?
I think if you presented some options, yes.
Joe, excuse me.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to ask if Joe, unless you were going to add something new, Mayor Guerrero, if Joe could just summarize what he just, so there's a sense of what we will be bringing back for the council's consideration on the 10th. I want to make sure we haven't left anybody's preferred map out or that there's no misunderstandings on that.
Yeah, so we started with all these maps that you identified. Again, we will bring back, we will elevate, I guess, draft map 2 as a map under consideration. Of these two, this draft plan 6, because it is very similar to draft plan 8, but it just has this area without the notches. So draft plan 2, draft plan 6. There is this public submission, which is based off of draft plan 4, 124635, that we will relabel draft plan 4A, and we will include in the in kind of the elevated submissions. And then there are these kind of final maps. I'm sorry, the I don't know what to call these, the 820 family that we can propose, give you different options at balanced populations in those ones. So we can look at 123820 and 124343, and then see where we can balance the population in those ones to get it under 10% deviation.
So you selected so you have 124343 and 124635 and map 2 and 6, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless there's any other.
So 5 maps in total. We went from 8 to 5.
No, I think one's going to get tweaked.
Those bottom 2 were 2 different maps that he's going to tweak, but we're technically still giving him 2 maps to tweak.
I counted 4 maps total, though.
You got 123820, 124343. They are very similar, but he's saying he's going to take those 2 and tweak them, and so that will be 5. So you got draft map 2, draft map 6, draft map 4A, and then he said he would tweak those 2 maps, which are very similar. So that's
I don't
5.
think you need to tweak. I mean, I thought the bottom line was we were going to take 820 and see if we could balance out the population, because they are very similar.
I mean, that works for me. I don't. I would love to give them less.
Me too. Me too. And so I think 820 and the 343 or whatever the other one, I already articulated what the difference was and how you could tweak, I guess, even 820 with the factors that, exist in 343, and maybe come up with something. I want to narrow it down to.
So Councilmember Rose, Madam Pro Tem, Mayor.
I'm council member.
I will get better, I promise. So you're saying 123820 is what he should be working with, what Joe should be working with, and tweaking that using the comments that you've made and articulated.
I mean, yeah, they're essentially the same map with some changes to where the 3 leads up to West Capitol Avenue, where the Linden Loop, just there's some other stuff there, and then there's a triangle at the bottom. But
I'm not going to talk you out of it. So you got 4 maps, Joe.
Excellent. Well, great.
We're all good now at this point, you think?
So what are the final?
I can go through them again. So we have draft plan 2, draft plan 6. This will be draft plan 4A. And then this will be a map that I make some changes in the Linden area and end up here. And we will give it a name.
Can we go between 2 and 6 again?
Yeah. This is 6. And this is 2.
And who wanted 2?
I went with 6, 8, and 2. Those were my choices. And Maria Garcia, who called in, she spoke in Spanish. She was saying her preferences were 2, I believe 6 and 8 also.
Right, because you talked to her, right?
But
Yes,
I mean,
she spoke to us, and she and her group decided on this.
But I mean, the change is on the south side, essentially here. And that kind of goes in the face of a lot of the public comment we had from people who live on the south side, who were bringing in, you know, one entire community and merging it with another that doesn't really look
Which
like
map are you talking about? Two?
C. Whichever one that we're looking at right this moment. Yeah. Okay. And so then Madam Mayor, sorry.
Okay, I was going to say my preference was 6, 8, and 2. You asked who was asking about 2, and
on the
I
council.
told Maria Garcia. Oh, on the council. That was my third. Okay, that was my third choice, number 2. But my first choice was 6, and then I went with 8, and then I said 2 because we were asked to narrow it down to 3. I think.
Okay, and Madam Mayor, what's between these two? Are these both 2 of your top choices?
I picked 6. There you go.
Okay, so can we narrow this down to 6 and then 820 and the 635?
I thought we already were almost down to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're at 4 right now, essentially. And then the question is does this draft plan 2 have enough support among the council to kind of take it into consideration at the next meeting?
I would say that we go with 6 because both council members like 6 more than 2, and I don't have anybody else that I've heard that has voiced support for 2.
I think Norma mentioned that there was a voice for 2, but that's what I just finished hearing from her.
Right. I was saying that I think, Karina, you're asking on council. I told you what my preferences were, but then there were community members, Mayor, that spoke about 1, 2, just to let you know.
So
I know that's what the community's wanting.
So I think that they can be tweaked if there are, you know, I think map 2 could be tweaked a little bit if there is a way to address some of the concerns around the south area. Map 2, let me take a look at map 2. Here we are. So I think that could be tweaked to take a look at District C and District D, you know, to address some of the concerns that you said you heard. That it does take into consideration Linden Road and the other side of Linden Road, which is what I did here, and the Stonegate area. So I see that in map 2, though. I do see that it took into consideration public comment concerns.
I don't think I might be missing the Linden Loop area that you're referring to, Madam Mayor. And because what we heard was that Stonegate and Linden Loop, right? That we heard that over and over again, thought of that should be more together. And then the other part that we heard from community members in the South was that Bridgeway Islands and Bridgeway Lakes should be together. I don't think this map takes into it. But
Right,
I mean,
but it could be, I think,
turn into it.
I mean, I do hear that there are other maps being tweaked here. I think, like, for example, 123-820, 124, 635. So, you know, that'll be 4A. And I do see that these maps aren't all perfect.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying the changes that would need to happen to this map to address what we heard from some of the community members in the South, it would literally need to turn into a whole new map.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And one of the things that Joe said at the top of this was, hey, you know, not major change, right? At this point, we should be, if you're putting the map forward, it's going to be tweaks. And again, we can consider it, but just the public comments we've heard along the whole way from community members regarding some of the South areas, this doesn't address those. And that's the only thing I would say. That I'm not saying that we can't put it forward. I'm saying it doesn't address the public comments that we've heard and the community comments we've heard thus far. That's all.
Well, I did hear public comment and interest in this, and from members of the community that, you know, are Spanish speaking and Latino members. So I did hear that. If there is a need of, and I'm reflecting on the south side, C and D. If there's a need to tweak that from other members that you've heard, we could take a look at that as well. I mean, Councilmember Alcala, do you want to say anything about that? I mean, I selected map 6, so.
Yeah, I mean, if it needs to be tweaked, I mean, obviously we have some very experienced demographers and they're hearing this conversation. So Paul and Joe.
The question is about Stonegate with kind of Linden Circle area, right? And if those could be in the same district in this map.
You got two major ones though, Joe, right? Because all along the way you've heard Bridgeway Islands and Bridgeway Lakes being together, and Stonegate and Linden Loop being together. And again, you worked your magic, sir. But those are the comments we heard in addition to.
If that was the direction you were to give me, you would end up with this map. Because this is Linden Circle with Stonegate and the Bridgeway Island and Lakes area together. That's essentially, there's just like, again, that's the mass population kind of.
Yeah, and I think that's the point I was just going to make. And I hear the interests and the concerns from my colleagues and some of the community members, and we'll entertain this map, but there's so many ways to turn the rubric here to find a configuration, and we're sort of, I look at, frankly, I look at 6 and 2 as the same map. To get to where we need to go, it's going to end up being the same map, and it's just we're trying to be at this point we got to start getting more concise and getting to a little closer to a decision, and so I have no problem with keeping 6. I think this is 6. Yeah, 6 on the board. Again, if at some point some of these we got to eliminate some of them, and I think just to get to where we think it's even 2, to get it to a point where it's achieving some of those objectives, it's going to look like this or one of the other maps, to be frank. So
yeah, I agree with that. So I would suggest eliminating 2, going with 6, going with 820 and the 635.
I guess I've already said it, right? My feedback would be draft map 2 would need to turn into a whole new map in order to address a lot of the public comments and community comments we've heard along the way. And so it would be difficult to support map 2 in its current form. And Joe, to your point, that it would need major changes, and so it wouldn't just be tweaks; it'd be major. It'd be a facelift.
And the direction I was hearing again, and it was just if we put the Stonegate area with Linden Circle, and then kept the Bridgeway, Lakes, and Island area together, that's this configuration right here, essentially.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
So I understand we're not taking a vote on this tonight, and we are providing suggestions. And so if we are down to 4 maps and that's where we're at, I think is that too many maps for you? Joe, Paul, John? No? Okay. Then I think we're fine moving forward.
I think I heard loud and clear that there should be 3 maps, but because I don't want to be wasting anybody's time here. If we have a map that's going to reflect the comments that we've been receiving with respect to the southern part of our city, we're essentially going back to map 6. And so I don't want all these folks, wasting their time spinning around with a map that it doesn't seem that most of the council has any support for. So I think the more prudent way to go is to narrow it down to 3 maps and move forward based on all the comments.
Go ahead, Councilmember Alcala.
I'm just wondering, Joe, can you work with 4 maps? Is it more difficult to do those 4? Because I think I know what you're saying, but I'm just asking Joe.
At this point, I mean, it doesn't seem like you're asking me to make any changes to draft map 2, so we would just display that on the website. Unless there is specific direction on what you want me to change about draft map 2. And it doesn't sound like you want me to change draft map 6, so we can display them, or we can just kind of rule one out if it doesn't have enough support right now. It's really up to you all, unless you're asking me to make major changes to the map.
I'd just like to have maybe the 4 maps put up there. I mean, we heard from some community members they wanted to, so you know, I'm in favor of 6. I like 8, but I don't want the community to feel we're being dismissive of some of their preferences. So I just would like to see the 4.
Councilmember Alcala, the only part that's difficult for me on that one is, you're right, we absolutely heard from community members on draft map 2, but we also heard, right, from community members regarding sort of the areas that they feel are representative of their community. And so that's the only thing that I would put out there. But I do see your point, Councilmember Alcala, which is, hey, doesn't hurt to have it up there, even if we're not going to move forward. Okay.
So I can review it just one more time and then happy to turn it back over. So at this point, there are essentially 4 maps that we will elevate for the next meeting. There's draft map 2, which we will make no changes to. There's draft map 6, another map that we will make no changes to. There is public submission 124635, which we will relabel for draft map 4A. And then there is public submission 123820 that we will explore census blocks around the Linden Circle area to solely just to balance the population and bring it below 10% deviation. And I believe we'll go ahead and call this one. We left off at draft map 8, so we'll call it draft map 9. And those are the 4 maps.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. It's been very helpful, and I got to say this, all the feedback from the community, greatly appreciate your kind, and know that this is not the end. We still have to narrow it down to 1 map and make that decision moving forward. So there'll be probably some unhappy residents out there, but we'll do the best we can to make the make the best decision here as we move forward, and appreciate the expertise from redistricting partners to be able to get us all the intel that we needed to at least take a look at it from a data perspective on these on these maps to achieve the best decision for the goal that we were tasked and assigned to make a meaningful decision. So with that, anything else from the staff? Are we all ready to wrap it up? And okay, thanks, John. All right. Next is under our regular agenda item is the community development is consideration of presentation of first reading of ordinance 22-08, repealing and adding section 1304, article 9 of West Sacramento Municipal Code relating to water conservation, in parentheses CD. Let's see who's going to be presenting on that today. It's going to be Mr. Burnett. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Let me see if I can share my screen. Sorry, just a sec. So just as a preview, I'm going to be discussing the drought. So don't look out your window because it's raining right now.
I don't see your presentation though, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm having an issue sharing it, so I'll just move forward. So my name is Ryan Burnett. I'm the Water Conservation Coordinator for the City of West Sacramento, and the purpose of tonight's item, as you said, is to update the municipal code as it's related to water conservation. So before I get into the details of what I'm proposing, I'd like to just give a little bit of background. So last year, the state of California entered another drought cycle. It was pretty intense. So half of the state was under an exceptional drought, which is the highest level possible. That wasn't for all of the drought, but it was for part of the drought. That means major crop failures, water emergencies, reservoir shortages. I'm sure you guys were all following that. The city itself experienced water allocation reductions. So in light of all of that, last month, the governor asked that the water board take his recommendation to move the state to a stage 2 water shortage. That would mean a 20% reduction requirement for West Sacramento. There are some other recommended actions, such as defining non-functional turf, which I can get into if you'd like, as well as doing a demand assessment earlier than needed. But the biggest thing is moving it to a stage 2. So in light of all of this, we think this is a great time to put forward this ordinance and create some permanent changes that will create lasting long-term conservation for the city. So what are those long-term changes? So we are recommending that we update the municipal code to have a permanent watering schedule. So that would be 3 days a week based on your address. And there would also be a watering window. There would be no irrigating between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. because that's usually the hottest time of the day. So we want to avoid evaporation. As for a sense of practicability, properties would have 45 hours per week to irrigate. So even the larger properties would not have issue meeting that goal. We also want to have some smaller updates to the code just for some clarification. For example, we want to provide a measurement for rainfall. We want 72 hours to fix the leak upon discovery because currently we don't have a time backstop for that. And we want to prohibit the wasteful practice of just hosing down hardscapes. That just makes sense to us, and it would also put us in line with an emergency order that the state put out last year. As far as outreach, we've done extensive outreach on this topic. We have a letter of support from the Chamber of Commerce. We have support from large businesses, apartment complexes. I went out personally and met with the businesses with the largest landscapes. So that's mainly apartment complexes, businesses over by IKEA. I did a little bit of phone tag with CHP, and they're all on board. They're all ready to fit within a 3-day-a-week schedule. I also got support from our Parks Department. Within their budget and their resources, they're doing what they can to create long-term conservation. And something that might be in the back of your head is there are some exemptions for this watering schedule. So special landscape areas like parks would be exempt from the schedule. Any drip irrigation would be exempt from the schedule, so that would make it even easier for properties to meet the watering days. And a new project would have an establishment period where they would be exempt from the schedule. So the watering schedule specifically is really grounded in my own experience. I've been doing house calls since 2017. I've done about 400 now. So all of this conversation about different neighborhoods I definitely have been around each of them, so it's interesting to hear all of this map discussion. And as I've done all of those, I found that a lot of people have their irrigation set 5 days a week, 7 days a week. And they usually say, you know, my landscaper sets it, or I set it once and it's in the corner of my garage and I just kind of forget about it. And something else that I do is I do high water use outreach. So every month I send letters to the highest water users. I help people discover leaks. I help people adjust their controllers. And I would say roughly 40% of the outreach I've done specifically in that area, I go out there and it's their timer. The timer is set for 5 days a week, 7 days a week. So I think putting in this permanent watering schedule will have long-term effect. We can really get some easy water savings just by having people go to their controller and change it. We also have a smart controller rebate. So if people are intimidated by their controller, you can get a new one that does the scheduling for you, and it'll ask, do you have any restrictions? You say yes, you put in your days, and then it'll do it for you. So, so we have a lot of things in place to help people change their timer. And we're also considering a cash for grass program. We know that those are popular. Some neighboring jurisdictions have them, and I'm currently in the research phase, looking into feasibility, scope. I've been meeting with some of those partners and asking them questions about cash for grass, what kind of savings it results in. So with all that, I respectfully request adoption of Ordinance 2208, which will repeal and replace Municipal Code 1304, Article 9, relating to water conservation. And at this point, I'd love to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Councilmember Alcala.
Thank you. Thanks so much for doing this. I do see a lot of water waste, and I was just going to ask, are we going to have this go out in the mail, you know, ways to conserve water, or are we just going to direct people to a certain site? And I was thinking it would be great to have the kids in the district, you know, come up with ways of conserving water when kids buy into this. And the reason I mention children is because I've seen my grandchildren, when they're brushing their teeth, they let the water run, right? Instead of using the cup and stuff. And you guys, I mean, there are little things like, I remember the bricks in the toilet also, that's supposed to help water conservation. So are you doing all that kind of stuff? And are we sort of doing it with our schools in mind?
Yeah, I certainly would be open to school outreach. My intention would be to make this massive outreach once it is adopted, because we really want people to know. Like I said, it's kind of perfect timing, because probably this month or next month, the water board is likely to adopt the stage 2, which I don't want to confuse anybody, but one of those things would be a 3-day-a-week watering schedule. So it's kind of like we would be putting it into place now, and it would kind of dovetail with the stage 2 shortage. So we would do a direct mailer, we would do a utility bill insert. I've made a connection with the Chamber of Commerce. I spoke with Diane Richards about making contacts with the large property owners. I really want to spread the word. And I've also created a list of all the professional landscapers that service the city. And I want to, put that in English and Spanish. And I think this is definitely something that can be used not only to educate, but to create partnership with that business community.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Early.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you for the presentation. I'll also be interested in talking to you offline about your thoughts on our maps. You're a community member too. So I do have a question because you just mentioned to Councilmember Acala's comment regarding the schools conserving water, that you would love to reach out to the school district. And so I actually just want to make sure that you already have reached out to them. And so my question would be, in regards to this, what feedback have you gotten back from them on this?
Yeah, so I meant I will do outreach once it's adopted. I did make an effort to reach out to the school district. I got the name and number for the chief superintendents. I emailed them. We emailed a little bit back and forth, but I wasn't able to set up a time with them. I didn't get a response, but I told them what we're working on. I've worked with them in the past, and they've always been, you know, whether it's a broken sprinkler I found or something, they've always been willing to work with us. So I think probably they just got busy and weren't able to respond. But I did reach out to them numerous times.
So Ryan, I just want to make sure that I'm fully knowledgeable about what we're doing here. So we are voting for permanent water restrictions, right? Moving forward. So forever, unless it would come back to the council. We're saying we're going to be preemptive to the state, and they'll come up with water restrictions. We kind of have an idea of what those water restrictions are going to be, and so ours are going to be in line with those water restrictions, just to make sure I'm following. We think. We don't know for sure, but we have an idea. Theirs would be temporary, not permanent. And if we approve this today, ours would be permanent, but we haven't had an opportunity to speak to the school district yet about their feedback on how this could impact them.
If I could jump in, Ryan, if you could go to the citation in the staff report, I think there may be some confusion. I believe you're talking about outreach in terms of the implementation of the program and how to reach households. But my understanding is there was outreach to the facilities director at the school district. So if you could elaborate on that, maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I did make contact with the maintenance supervisor of the Washington Unified School District, and he said he'd be open to setting up a time. And I tried to follow up a few times, but we weren't able to set up a time.
Okay, so there's two kinds of outreach. There's, hey, council, if you do approve this, then there's the outreach of making sure people are aware, right? Making sure people are following. Then there is the outreach of, hey, we're about to do this. How might this impact you? Just in case we want to talk to you first, just in case there might be something that we're not considering or some tweaks. And in my mind, the school district would be a pretty big partner who could be impacted by this permanent change. And it sounds like we've reached out to them, but we haven't actually heard from them how this could impact them. Am I?
Yeah, that's right. So I reached out. I reached out to them expressing the purpose that we want their feedback, whether they support this, whether they think it's feasible. How
could impact them? Right.
Yeah. And then I got a reply from them to say, yeah, let's find a time. And then I followed up numerous times and I didn't get a response. One thing I would say as far as practicability is any area that's considered a special landscape area, so that'd be playgrounds, ball fields, the majority of the large areas that the Washington Unified School District manages would be exempt from this. So really what would probably be what they would have to deal with might be small landscape strips between the buildings or decorative lawn outside. And I can't imagine that within 45 hours they couldn't irrigate that. So
then like parks like the Elkhorn Village Park, right? That wouldn't be impacted because that's school property. And so they could water 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 365, and it wouldn't.
That's
okay,
right.
That's helpful to understand.
What's called a special landscape area, things like cemeteries and parks. They figure, if lush grass is actually used, it's not just a bunch of grass next to a commercial property.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. Oh, your mic is off. I thought you wanted to speak.
Oh, thank you. No, I just had a question. I'm wondering how, because you just said that, grass that's being used is treated differently than just, you know, I guess it's not similarly situated. I know Natomas, for example, just opened a water recreation facility. Are there plans in place so that way, if we are in a state of drought, we're trying to reduce water usage, that there's like some kind of recycling, or I'm wondering how that impacts the state's, you know, request of everyone to reduce water use.
So water shortages stages, we try to tackle the most voluntary water first. So that would be lawns, you know, going from no restrictions down to 3 days a week and then 2 days a week, only serving water upon request. Recycled water is a pretty large project, and I think at this point the city doesn't have any recycled water in operation. So that would take a few years to get in place. As far as the water parks go, I believe during the last drought they were still in place, and that was a Parks Department decision, but I can follow up with you on that.
Like, I know that the splash park was shut down for some time. I mean, I showed up and there was no splashing at the park.
It was shut down.
That was not okay.
It was shut all the way down.
So, you know, I mean, it was okay, obviously, because we needed to do it, but it wasn't okay when you have a whole bunch of kids that, you know, are expecting to splash. So that said, I understand why we do. I just want to know what the terrain looks like, future planned activity. Thanks.
All right. Councilmember Alcala again.
I just wanted some clarification, Brian. I'm looking at this watering window, and you said from 7 p.m. to 10 a.m., but when you spoke, you said 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Could you clarify that? Which one is it?
Yeah, so there'd be no irrigating in the middle of the day between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Oh, okay. It switched on what we were giving on the analysis on watering window. That's why I was asking. Thank you.
And are there any more questions among the council members? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
Anybody would like to make a comment on this item, please raise your hand at this time. We have one hand raised. Get my timer. Kathy Bailey.
Yes, thank you for letting me speak. So I have a question regarding areas where we have condos and we have some green belts that kids play. It's not considered a park, but it is where kids play. It's where dogs go to the bathroom. I mean, kind of thing. We're in a condensed area, so you're gonna take away those green belts, but what are we gonna have there? Just dirt? We can't like let it. I mean, if we let it go, we let it go. I mean, we're already watering at 1 and 3 in the morning, so we're already following your guidelines for not doing it during the day. But 3 days a week, doesn't that kill grass? So how are we going to have a place for kids to play? They're going to have to go to the park, which is great because they're going to be exempt, but we're going to look like a dirt area. I don't understand for condensed areas what you would like us to do.
Ryan, can you hold off, please? Thank you.
Sorry. First council meeting.
That's okay. Any other, Madam, are you done? Sorry, just wanted to make sure you're. Madam Clerk, are there any other requests to speak?
We have no other hands raised.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back to council. And are there any other comments among the council members? And so I will, I do have a few questions, Brian. First of all, I want to say how much we appreciate your role here in the city. This is, I didn't realize we had a water conservation person who's really thinking this through. I knew we had a unit works on this, but your dedication is greatly appreciated. And I can tell that this is something you've put a lot of thought into and preparation. I think the point made about making sure there is enough communication and outreach, just to let people know. And even if we can figure out a way, and those public kiosks that are, those motorized ones, if we can let people know that there are some changes happening, to check the city's website or to sign up for an email to be able to receive notifications in advance of the changes, and emphasizing that there is a water shortage, or even a little video of that explaining the impact of our water shortage, and preserving water for the sake of, we need to have drinking water, and other emergency uses of water are needed. So I just want to be able to make sure that, and there's, for the sake of literacy issues, in those areas that I think people are challenged, videos are more helpful, and making sure that it's done in more than one language in the primary languages of our city. So that way, the message reaches out to all community members, if at all possible. And in taking a look at the watering schedule, the watering schedule, there is a point that's made. The watering window, I guess it's related to the irrigation system and those with drip systems versus, and I wanted to compare that to what's actually in the draft modification in the ordinance. Is that language, do you think that language is clear enough for people to understand that if they have a drip system, and let me just make sure that I got it correct. If you have a drip system, you are exempt?
That zone would be exempt. Yeah.
And is that clear enough in the draft language that we have? Is that the point where it's there's a low water use irrigation system? Is that the definition?
Yeah. So in the update we have to the municipal code, we provide the schedule, and then below the schedule we list the exemptions, including special landscape areas like parks and low water use irrigation.
Low water use irrigation. Okay. So that translates into drip systems. Is that, I just want to make sure that definition comes up. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. And in the 3 days versus 5 days, for example, and concerns that people have. I mean, I visited other parts of the country where there is no grass. That's the reality. You live in a desert, but we're getting to that point. And in order to protect, there is no rain, and we have a lot of work to do to protect our resources. Councilmember Early, who is sitting in our water boards, probably hears it a lot, and I know that she probably will, be able to share a little more about the concerns that we've heard in and around the state of California, and being able to access water. I think we've had additional thought about where we're going to be accessing water, transfer it over here to West Sacramento, and be proactive. Some appreciate that we are taking action here today, and it being permanent versus temporary. I think that's kind of like where we're at this point. We don't foresee any major changes happening in like a monsoon or anything like that happening to be able to balance what we need in our water supply. So I think that these are the right steps that we need to take. Councilmember Early, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to make sure I fully understood the repercussions of let's say you don't follow the ordinance, right? Whether that be you got to fix something within 48 hours, and you can't get the your person, your maintenance guy out there, or man, I'm working and I won't be off work for 72 hours, whatever the case may be. I'm curious how what the leniency is, what the consequences of not meeting the ordinance, what that means. Is it a fine? Right? Is it a ticket? Do you eventually put a lien on people? Right? Like, I have no idea. But I think that's my concern.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm also, I kind of go up and down the ladder. I do legislation and I also do waterways. So I'm the waterways cop for the city, and I barely find people. That's not the goal. The goal is to educate. And I have found that once people are educated, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and they fix it. So as it relates to the watering schedule, that would be the same thing. My attitude is this is brand new. The goal is not to find people. The goal is first to educate. Specifically, the ordinance, the current, what we have in place now is I would go out. If it's confirmed, I leave you a letter. I also try to make contact with you. It's just a notice. If it continues, whatever issue it is, a broken sprinkler, not adhering to the water schedule, you get a second notice. And then upon the third notice would be the first fine. And, I can just tell you that it's been years since I've fined somebody, because usually I'm able to make contact, I'm able to point out the issue, and we get it resolved.
How long between the first notice and the second notice? I'm just curious, like on average.
It's usually depends on the severity of the issue. If somebody just complained about a broken sprinkler and I couldn't find it, that's one thing, maybe a week. If somebody has a broken main and there's water gushing down the street, then we're going to be more proactive.
That feels very, very different than potentially a broken sprinkler or something like that. I'm just curious, how long do people actually have? Because I can tell you, like 48 hours, as much as I would want to make that happen, right? Like, it might be hard to fix it. I'm turning everything off though, and maybe that's your point, right? As long as it's off and you're not using it, even if it's broken, right? If you can't get to it within 48 hours, but you can get to it within a week or whatever the case may be, then there's some reasonable, right? Because I guess I'm just thinking, the person that's got, a job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and they're trying to fit this in. That's in my mind. And so I just be helpful just to give you some context why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, usually, I tend to, depending on the severity of the issue, it's kind of a week between each notice. If I'm making contact with people, I can be more lenient. If it's a more severe issue where water's clearly being wasted, then the timeline needs to be scooted up a little bit. And so what we're proposing to update here is 72 hours upon discovery, and the discovery could be me telling. So then that starts the first 72 hours. And then, they let me know they fixed it. If they don't, I come back out. That's, like I said, this is something we have the ability to do, but I haven't fined people in a long time. Because usually,
so it's really education. It's really trying to, as Madam Mayor said, conserving our water and our resources. In regards to the education, outside of just saying, hey, you've got a leak, do you provide additional education in regards to, and you can get it fixed here, or here's some, right? Like, just don't know. Do you point to something to help also in that regard, or is it just like you got to figure it out? Google it.
So we leave the notice that has my information, and if I'm able to make contact with them, I definitely point them. I also do the house calls, so I offer to come out and say, it looks like you got a broken sprinkler. I'd be happy to come out, show you where it is. I can also take a look at your whole system.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Yeah, and can I make just a couple points based on Madam Mayor? So we're already in the process of preparing for the stage 2. Our division, we have a mascot named Recycle Bell. She's the cute little cow. We've been working with community relations, trying to increase our social media outreach. So we're already working on a video that Recycle Bell would host and provide the information about entering a stage 2 drought. We've already done it. We already did it for the stage 1. And it's something that we hope gets traction. It is video based, like you pointed out. It's friendly. I think community relations does a great job. So, if this passes and it becomes an ordinance, we would use those same tools to try to reach everybody.
That'll be great. Thank you. Councilmember Ledesma, you had your hand up there for a second.
I did, and I think Councilmember Early kind of addressed it sort of around the quote unquote enforcement part of this in terms of, and I appreciate, Ryan, your responses and sort of the approach you're taking. Thank you for the presentation tonight. The job you're doing, a thoughtful job you're doing. And what I'll add is just, and it's really just for, I do appreciate the education piece of it, that you're going to approach it in a way to help educate folks, help folks. But there is a resolvedness that this presents from councils that we need to conserve. And there's a seriousness to this. And I think we all understand that. And it's, this isn't the first time we've gone through it. It's the first time we'll put in these kind of permanent changes. But we take a lot of pride in our water system, and it's relatively new. And we have water rights to and bring in water when needed, and it's been cited by local food companies and the beverage companies in town as an asset. And unfortunately, due to climate change and due to conditions we've had, we are facing a real potentially devastating drought. It's already impacting farmers up and down the valley, and it's impacting the way we are managing water. So while I appreciate and I want the education approach and the approach you're taking on this, I think it's important the community understand this is a serious, we're entering a serious drought phase, and our ability to sort of support staff, have all the right questions. I appreciate my colleagues asking great questions and making sure the outreach is right, because this will impact people. And frankly, we're all going to hear it. The neighbor who wants to, and we heard some of it tonight, and I empathize and sympathize. But we are stewards of our resources here in our city. It's important that we sort of support staff on this. So I'm 100% supportive. I'm not sure if there's any more comments. I'm willing to make a motion, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Ledesma. I'll put the motion on the table. I do have one more comment. I'm going to be channeling Dr. Early here for a second. So, Mr. Burnett, I do want to be able to collect some kind of data as we're moving forward on, who are our water violators, and if there's any socioeconomic, factors that we can take a look at. Could it be, barriers in our communication, reaching out to those who need to be in compliance? Is it, just resistance? And how do we, get more psychologically, motivating, behavioral changes so people realize, hey, this is real serious. We've got to save water. I want us to be the number one water saving city in the state, for example. So, just to be able to, gather that kind of intelligence and then, be better equipped so that we can provide, and maybe there is, funding we need to put, set aside to help people fix their sprinklers or, purchase toilets, for example, or, fix those leaky faucets in some places that it could be real expensive. I remember when I changed my faucet, I had a heart attack for the plumber bill.
I think, Madam Mayor, I think that's what I was getting at with my questions as well. I'm concerned about there being resource barriers. And that's why I asked about enforcement. I would hate to unintentionally negatively impact marginalized communities. Again, because this is what we're supposed to do. I agree. But I think we're also supposed to ensure that people can actually meet the criteria that we're setting forward. And if we need to provide some additional help, whether that's our program, right, Cash for Grass, whether that's some of these other things that you're naming, I love. I think that's going to be important. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. And I do want to just give Mr. Burnett the opportunity to know that we're backing you those ideas. So that's why we appreciate your presence, your interest, expertise, and being the water police in a compassionate way, so that we can move forward on making some progress in the city. And Councilmember Ledesma, did you want to add one more point, or? No, okay.
I appreciate the points you're making, and that's the great part about where you sit is you just said you just set some direction for Ryan. I agree. If there's resources that we can provide, feel free to I think you're hearing a resounding, let's look into that. And again, we'll have to make choices financially about where we get that from. And I know in the staff report, it calls out Measure N as a possible source for the Cash for Grass and whatever we might go forward. But I think that's sort of, that's our prerogative. So it was a great point. But and I would agree with it. So unless there's any other points.
I want as your city manager would like to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, I guess it's now 3 points. One on the last point of discussion the council just had about potentially looking into other types of programs to perhaps subsidize water conservation in people's homes. I would just ask, I know Ryan's already looking into Cash for Grass in other communities. If we can also broaden that to include some of the other programs that were mentioned tonight. Councilman Ledesma beat me to it, but Measure N is definitely an appropriate use for those types of things. So we'll definitely look into that. Secondly, I just wanted to make a point of clarification, really a question for Ryan, then I'll get to my last point. The implementation date for this ordinance, I noticed in the report, I think it was an older date. So could you clarify for the council if it's approved tonight, when it would actually take effect?
It'd be 90 days, I believe.
Okay, so 90 days from today. And the third point I was going to make is obviously we do have some loops to close with the school district for starters. Granted, they may have exemptions to some of their facilities, but we definitely want to make sure that we're fully informing them and encouraging them to do everything they can. So my commitment to the council tonight, and I know Ryan's going to follow up on this, is to make sure that we do complete that outreach and do as much as we can with our partner at the school district to help them with the implementation of this before the 90-day period where it takes effect. So with that, I know there's a motion on the table, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
There's a second.
And Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Alcala is the second? Okay. All right, and with that, thank you so much, Mr. Burnett, and look forward to hearing back from you on our progress as we move forward. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, this motion is approved. Next is the regular agenda item. Under the regular agenda item is police. Under police is consideration and first reading of ordinance 22-16, adopting a military equipment use policy and approving the use, acquisition, collaboration, and seeking of funding for military consideration. And so I have on the agenda first reading, but I also see on the agenda report adopting. So I think that's the actual point that we are doing here today, Council. And I think we have Lieutenant Charles Meeks, who I just want to say welcome to West Sacramento. I know you're a fairly new hire here in West Sac PD, and also you come full circle from starting out in out here in the past, and then going out and then coming back in, I think from retirement, I recall, but I don't know if that's correct. But welcome here to West Sacramento. And
thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Charles Meeks. I am a lieutenant with the West Sacramento Police Department. And this evening, I'm here to present for consideration of Ordinance 22-16. Effective January 1st, 2022, Assembly Bill 481, codified Government Code Sections 7070 through 7075, require law enforcement agencies to obtain approval from the agency's governing body through an ordinance prior to taking any action related to funding, acquisition, collaborating with other entities as it relates to the use of military equipment as defined in Section 7070 Government Code. It should be noted that AB 481 has a broad interpretation of what qualifies as military equipment and encompasses equipment not necessarily acquired, purchased from, or previously used by the military. AB 481's list of items identified as military equipment includes equipment the department currently utilizes, such as unmanned aerial and ground vehicles, commonly referred to as our UAS drones and our EOD robots, and our MRAP vehicle, commonly recognized as our SWAT team's armored vehicle. So throughout our history, up to and including the present, the department has found it necessary from time to time to utilize equipment like the items listed above in order to protect the public and its officers in the most efficient and community-conscious manner. Specifically, equipment such as the MRAP is used when West Sacramento Police Department officers face gunfire for prolonged incidents. Such ballistic equipment allows more opportunities to de-escalate situations by equipping responding teams with the ability to resolve life-threatening conditions in the safest way possible for the community, the victims, bystanders, suspects, and officers. Although some of the identified equipment and devices may be used infrequently, their availability expands the choice of non-lethal or less lethal options for the large variety of dynamic and dangerous encounters faced in our city and our profession. Limiting those choices without careful analysis could lead to decreasing options of relevant temporary interventions that may allow for de-escalation, the ability to decrease the severity of violence, and the reduction of harm overall. If I may, I'd like to give some examples of the MRAP and drones capabilities. An example of the MRAP's capabilities during a tragic incident occurred in 2019 when Officer Natalie Corona was killed in Davis. Our MRAP vehicle was utilized to encroach on the suspect's residence, which afforded our officers the ability to provide overwatch cover from Natalie's from the residence of the suspect through the vehicle's turret, while crisis response team members attempted to bring the incident to a peaceful resolution. In 2017, the department's MRAP was also used during an incident on Capitol Bridge Street, where a suspect was parked in the road, stated she had a bomb in her vehicle. During that incident, the MRAP was utilized to provide effective cover and an overwatch view for the officers as they attempted and successfully brought the incident to a peaceful resolution. So moving on to our UAS drones, which are also listed in AB 481 as military equipment. The UAS drones are often used to assist in searching large areas not easily accessible for missing or at-risk people as well as suspects. The UAS deployments also provide us with the ability to send a small UAS drone to search an area prior to officers for safety and the ability to maintain a bird's eye view during critical incidents. One example of the UAS drone's capabilities involved an incident which occurred in August 2021 across the street from City Hall. Patrol officers were dispatched to an area concerning a subject believed to be armed with a handgun. As patrol personnel began to formulate a plan to search for the subject, a UAS drone was deployed and able to search and find the subject in question at a bus stop. The drone was able to provide live video feed, which was relayed to the responding officers in an effort to determine if the suspect was indeed armed with a handgun. This then allowed the officers the time and ability to determine the best tactic to use in bringing the incident to a peaceful resolution. Ultimately, the subject was taken into custody safely and without the need to escalate the situation. These deployment examples demonstrate the safety and response capabilities we currently have in the department's military equipment reserve. AB 481 mandates the policy must be introduced to the governing body by May 1st, 2022, for the agency to continue using the equipment, and the policy must pass via ordinance within 180 days of introduction, or the agency must cease using the equipment. As such, the West Sacramento Police Department seeks City Council approval and adoption via Ordinance 22-16 in order to comply with AB 481, which would allow the department to continue using vital equipment to enhance community, citizen, and officer safety. Loss of this equipment would jeopardize the welfare of the community and our officers. The availability of this equipment is important in maintaining a full array of options that would allow us to keep community and officer safety prioritized, while simultaneously affording us greater opportunities to employ the de-escalation methods and instruments. Madam Mayor and members of the council, I thank you for your time and appreciate the council's attention. Look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you, Lieutenant Meeks. Are there any questions among council members? All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Madam Clerk, are there any requests?
Sorry, Mayor, I did just have 2 questions.
Oh, sure, go ahead, Councilmember Rafael.
Okay, thank you. The proposed weapons, I believe, military use, WSPAD. Are you going to be asking that these be included in the budget? I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that. There's some items I had some questions on, like on number 9, a mine-resistant, ambush-protected MRP vehicle. The cost for that is $500,000. Do we currently have that, or is that something that's a proposed buy? Officer or anyone?
Yes.
So number 9, the vehicle, the MRAP vehicles, it says cost $500,000. Is that something that's going to be purchased or that we currently have? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, the MRAP vehicle is something we already have.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the valuation of that vehicle. My understanding is it was actually provided at no cost of acquisition through a prior program. I believe there were some costs to outfit the vehicle and repaint it to the city colors.
Okay.
That's the value of the.
Okay, Aaron, thanks. And just quickly, how many years that it says has a 25-year lifespan? So what are we looking at? How many more years does it have?
My memory's a little foggy on that, but I want to say it was acquired within the last 10 years. Okay. And I'm confident about that. It may have been a little less.
And the only other thing that really, that's okay. I just real quick questions. And then 15 pepper ball launchers. The only reason this really caught my eye is I remember the incident that happened with the students at UC Davis. You know, so how often do we use something like that? And have we used them within the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, I definitely don't want to misspeak given my short time with the department. So I don't know prior to my arrival how often it was used. I would say that, like all the other equipment we have, it provides us an opportunity to use less lethal force when it's appropriate, and take a defensive posture. It just provides us options.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I saw that on a lot of the items, less lethal force. Okay, all right, that's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was losing track here. Did I open it up to public comment yet, Madam Clerk? I think that was my next step, and then
That was, yes.
That was, yes.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment? I'm opening that up now.
Anybody would like to make public comment on this item, please raise your hand at this time. I see no hands raised.
Okay, closing the public comment, bringing it back to council. And in reading what we're approving, consideration of ordinance 22-16, adopting a military equipment use policy and approving the use, acquisition, collaboration, and seeking of funding for military equipment. I'll accept a motion to approve.
Well, if I may, Madam, just a quick comment. Just thank you.
Sure.
Officer Meeks for A, returning, and B, for the bringing this to council. I think it is an important piece of legislation because it was drawn up for a reason, which is and we are not one of them. At least we have not been a community where our police department, we weren't aware of what the police department was purchasing, or they weren't forthright or transparent in sort of what those things are. And I think that's what this bill is attempting to do. So we have inventory now of what you have, and good questions tonight from my colleague, Councilman Alcala, and in terms of understanding kind of what those things are. But it's important that we know we are the oversight body for our police force, and we're lucky to have a really good police force, and one that's been transparent with data and with our initiatives to support things like 21st century policing, and how we have changed our police force. And this is just another kind of milestone along that path. So we'll take the legislation. I'm supportive of this, and we'll make the motion to go forward with it. But I want to thank for providing the report.
Second. Ledesma. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. And I agree. Thank you, Councilmember Ledesma. This is very important legislation, which gave us the opportunity for us as council to review what it is in our inventory of equipment that our first responders have experienced firsthand utilizing, has reduced the risk of more serious harm, and taking the least intense approach to be able to apprehend, criminals out there. And, going on a ride along, I've been able to see that firsthand as well. Very informative, and just to appreciate the training and, expertise, and just also the recruitment of making sure that we hire police officers who are going to be following, the preparation that our police officers have in being able to deliver what we do out in the community safely, and also keep the public safe as well. So with that, Madam Clerk, Councilmember Ledesma moved and Mayor Pro Tem Orozco seconded. Can you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor, can I just very
Sure.
quickly, I want to make sure that it's clear. This is
Yes.
first reading of the ordinance, right? So it will be back for adoption at a subsequent meeting. Right?
Oh, wait, I'm confused. I thought this was going to be first and second.
No, ordinances require two readings, they require two trips to the council, right? We shorthanded by saying first reading, but there is introduction and first reading, and then there is a subsequent meeting at least 5 days later for adoption. So this item will need to come back at the first regular meeting in May for final adoption, just like any other order.
We don't need to vote on this tonight.
No, this is first reading, and waive the first reading, read by title and number only. Basically, first reading technically would be you'd literally read the entire ordinance. So that's why we waive the reading. We don't actually read it.
And just to add to that, we typically do the first reading as the format we just did. The second reading typically comes back on consent.
Correct.
So is that action tonight? Because it's
Right.
marked as action. The action is the act of reading it. Was that the action?
Yes, the agenda description is not entirely correct. The agenda description suggests that it's going to be adopted tonight. It is not actually up for adoption tonight. It is every ordinance, with limited exceptions, makes two trips to the council. You do an introduction, and then you do adoption. Adoption has to follow at least 5 days after introduction. There are some limited exceptions, but none that apply here.
So Jeff, just to further clarify, is a vote appropriate at this point?
I don't think we typically vote on the first reading.
It's too late for me to remember, so.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
Thank you for that clarification. So we don't need to take a vote tonight.
It's a little late for me too, but I don't believe we typically take a vote when we do just introduction and first reading. And so we simply hold that, you have your public meeting, you take public comment, and then you bring it back at a subsequent meeting for adoption.
Thank you for that clarification.
But you know, that's I'll just take the opportunity to say this is why I recommend we just move the recommended action. The recommended action is correct. It says those things, and then it will come back at a subsequent meeting.
Move the recommended action, but no vote required.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, others can speak up. Jennifer, if you have a different view on it, but I don't believe we vote on first reading of ordinance.
I thought that we were voting to waive the first reading
Right, I had
in full.
That's what I read in the analysis, and I asked questions about that, but maybe
then
that's
fine. Let's do it that way. And I apologize. We'll have to go back and think about this, but
It's been about 10 years for me since I've done it.
well, we do a lot of ordinances and we go through first reading. I'm just drawing up blank tonight whether we vote on them. So I would say go ahead, move the recommended action.
Because not to throw another wrench in this, but we did take action on the previous ordinance, and that was also the first reading.
Oh, there you go. Excellent. So
we'll follow suit. I think I made a motion on the recommended action.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco seconded, and then we'll have Madam Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Early?
Aye.
Councilmember Akala?
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco?
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero?
Aye. All right, motion is approved. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Meeks.
And Mayor, council members, thank you.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Okay, next is under the administrative function part 2, under council communications. Are there any reports among the council members?
I'll be quick because I can see some tired eyes on my television screen. On April 7th, the meeting of the Transportation Committee of SACOG. Just a few actions having to do with one is around the active transportation program policy framework, and then draft final regional trail network and prioritization framework, and that's around the trail system in the region. Those are two things of substance. And then on this 2 Mondays ago, Monday the 11th was Yellow Transportation District. The only thing of concern or issues are two things. One is around getting an update, starting the budgeting process for YCTD, and they were looking at planned service levels given the pandemic. So we're seeing some comeback, but we'll be watching that very closely. And I made it clear local agencies like ours don't want to be surprised with an increase. So this is a note to Jason or Andrea, whoever on the phone, to kind of keep an eye on the budget coming out of YCTD. And then two, just an audit of financial statements, and we got this back. Things are fine at YCTD, so the audit was fine. No other things to report.
Thank you. Any other reports among the council members? No. Okay, I have a couple of reports. Today, the Yolo County City Selection Committee convened to approve the following appointments. The City of Winters Mayor Wade Cohen is now the City Selection Committee Chair. Mayor Gloria Partida is now Vice Chair. Mayor Cohen has been appointed to the Local Agency Formation Commission as a regular city member. Mayor Partida will be the alternate member. Councilmember Alcala, Local Agency Formation Commission, as the regular city member for a term ending May 1st, 2024. Councilmember Ledesma to the County Redevelopment Successor Agency Oversight Board, term ending June 30th, 2024. And last week, Congresswoman Matsui came out to tour West Sacramento. And, we were accompanied by all of the staff who have a lot of expertise to help us in the tour. We toured the federally supported housing programs, which included some programs along West Capitol Avenue, Project Home Key Site, Mercy Housing, and also the city's first permanent supportive housing facility. We also toured the Southport Setback Levee Trail site along Linden Road and Village Parkway. And we received some federal funding from that, so we were able to show that, to her. We also toured Bright Park and reviewed the master plan for Bright Park and the plans to submit a funding request at the federal level. And she was very interested in providing support for that. And we toured the Washington District, taking a look at what we are planning to do on the I Street Bridge and the deck conversion, and how some funding is being used to, or plans for funding to be used to address, those improvements. So just want to, thank the Congresswoman, and we also took a look at some of the levee improvements that have been made along the Sacramento River, and Mr. Fabian was able to provide additional education and information to the Congresswoman's staff who accompanied us in this tour. So just very grateful for her visit, and appreciate everybody's interest in seeing the city continue to thrive with their investments at the federal level. And let's see, next is the appointments. I don't have a list of recommendations yet. I don't know if we'll be getting more applications in, so I don't have any recommendation for commission appointments today. Council calendar.
Good evening. Just wanted to remind everyone about the Chamber's wine dinner at the Sugar Mill next Tuesday at 5:30. And then it's not on the calendar yet, but Greater Sacramento Economic Council, they're having their annual celebration the following Thursday at April 28th from 5:30 to 9, and that's at the barn. And then also not on the calendar yet, but we'll get it on there. There'll be a ribbon cutting for the Midway Bar and Grill at noon on May 11th. And you all should be invited to all three of them. Thank you.
Amanda, the May 4th meeting on there, I think on the calendar, at least that I have in our packet, still says we have a meeting on May 4th. That's not correct, right?
That is not correct. It has been updated, so the calendar that you'll get this week should have.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thanks.
City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. And that's a good reminder for both the council and the public, especially the next council meeting is actually a special meeting to be held on May 10th. I believe the start time, Amanda can help me out on that, but it's specifically to consider the final maps that were discussed tonight. My report, though, I wanted to touch on one item. Speaking of Bright Park, some good news. The county board of supervisors, I believe it was last week, gave near final consideration to the remaining ARP funding. And so they allocated some additional funding to different uses throughout the county. One of those was $1 million for the Bright Park project. And so I just wanted to announce that and acknowledge Supervisor Oscar Villegas for leading the charge on that. And of course, also Supervisor Gary Sandy for his support as our other supervisor in West Sac. But that had, I believe, unanimous support from the board. The mayor mentioned that we're also putting in a federal request through the community projects process, whatever they're calling that now. And so hopefully we'll be getting some good news there too, with the whole point of putting together a full funding package for the park. So more to come on that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. City Attorney?
Nothing more to say tonight.
Thank you so much. Future agenda item request by council? None? All right. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Right. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Acala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Likewise.
Aye.
Thank you.